mic is acting up? Well, I'll give it, okay, it is now 6 o'clock according to my computer. So let's get this started. Hello and welcome to the March 7th, 2024 meeting of the Humboldt County Planning Commission. I'm Noah Levy. Thanks so much to those of you who are attending in the room. Before we get started, as usual, I want to remind folks that are watching online or following along remotely that you can participate in this meeting remotely. The ways to do that are spelled out on page 2 of our agenda. If you're at a computer and actually wish to comment in the meeting, we recommend you use the Zoom link, which is at the top of the page. You can also participate by phone, and if you are watching the LegStar, Humboldt.legstar.com website, which shows the live stream video, just know that that runs perhaps a minute behind real time. So if you're planning to use the phone to participate after watching that, just do it a little earlier than you might think. And with that, I would invite you to join me in a salute to the flag. Okay, well, in just a moment we'll have a roll call of commissioners present, but before we do that, I just want to welcome Lorna McFarland, our newest commissioner, who's the new at-large commissioner. Thanks for joining us. And I also want to thank and acknowledge Brian Mitchell, who served as the at-large commissioner for more than 7 years and was a great advocate for the environment and the public process. So I'm personally grateful to him for his service. With that, could we have a roll call of commissioners present, please?
Commissioner Scavdall.
Here.
Commissioner Mulder. Commissioner Levy.
Here.
Commissioner Curiozzi.
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Here.
Commissioner West.
Present.
Commissioner McFarland.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 6 out of 7, which is a quorum. I'm told that Commissioner Mulder will be here shortly. Director, are there any modifications to the agenda that you'd like to suggest?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I would. We identified that the ECD Holdings conditional use permit is currently identified basically as the 4th item under public hearings. Since this was continued to this date, we would recommend that you move it up to old business and do that first.
Sure, that would be our customary practice. So do that, you're recommending we put that first under public hearings?
That is correct.
Okay, I'm fine with doing that. Are other commissioners okay with that? ECD Holdings, which is listed last under public hearings, but that's the one that was on last meeting's agenda and we continued it, so. All right. And Laura, can the record reflect that we now have Commissioner Mulder?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so with that, we will move to item D, which is public comment on non-agenda items. This is the time in every meeting when people can comment on any issue that's not on our agenda tonight, but that is before or within the jurisdiction of the Planning and Building Department. Let me just first ask, is there anyone in the room who wishes to comment on a matter that's not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, then I will take a look at Zoom. And I do see one hand up on Zoom to comment. That's Public 7108. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you.
I just have one comment about the action summaries. Tonight, you've got on the consent the December 14th, but I noticed that the November 30th, it comes before that, is not available. So hopefully that'll get approved in another meeting. And I wanted to thank John Ford for seeing to it that the watershed maps are back on with the permit applications. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no other hands on Zoom or phone, I will close the public comment on non-agenda items and now bring us to the consent agenda.
Chair,
Yes.
just before you go there, I just wanted to disclose a couple of things or make a couple of comments if I could.
Certainly.
First is I did review all of last meeting, so I did watch it online. If you haven't done that, you should try it sometime.
Yeah.
It's actually difficult to hear some of the meeting. But did watch, including listening to the public comment that related to the public hearing we're going to have later this evening. Also, appreciate all the time you spent on the sign ordinance. Just wanted to acknowledge that, and that staff did address all my concerns, even though I wasn't there at the meeting, and that I thought, and I thank the rest of the commissioners for approving that and getting that taken care of, and think you did a great job. And then I just wanted to disclose ex parte that was a slow week for me with all the rain, so I was able to actually stop by every one of the project sites that's on our agenda tonight. I did not speak to anybody, but I was able to get a sense of the setting of the various projects that we're going to review this evening. So, thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay. Well, with that, we'll run through the consent agenda and see which things may need to be pulled for discussion or questions. Actually, it's a very short consent agenda. Okay, so the first item is review and approval of the December 14th, 2023 action summary. I admit I couldn't quite hear the commenter's comment about that. She was suggesting that we may want to pull that and make a correction, I believe.
No, she was actually, Chair, if I could, identifying that she hadn't seen the November 30th meeting being available.
Oh, got it.
And just wanted to make sure that that is either approved, had been approved, will be approved, or that appropriate actions taken.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Well, and thank you for that comment. Okay, so is there anyone who does wish to pull the action summary for discussion or changes? Seeing none, we'll leave that on consent. And then the only other consent item is the Felmley parcel map subdivision and special permit in the Ridgewood area near Eureka. Is there anyone wishing to pull that one?
Yes.
Okay, we will pull that for a discussion. So with that, then we just have the one item, the action summary on consent, and I would welcome a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner O'Neill, seconded by Commissioner Scavdall. Any further discussion on that? Then all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Oh, sorry.
I think I should abstain on that
I
one.
should have mentioned that. I should have asked her. You're abstaining.
Yes. I'm assuming that's the most appropriate for this.
Because you weren't, well, I'll actually pass that to county council. I think we've had a different answer to that question on whether you should abstain if you were not at a meeting.
I think it's appropriate to abstain for that reason. It's not necessary, but appropriate.
Okay, fair enough.
I will also abstain.
Okay, my apologies. I should have asked for extension. So we have 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 abstaining. That's Commissioner Kyriazi and Commissioner McFarland. Okay. Well, and the items pulled from consent will go at the end of the meeting, but I hope and expect we'll have time to deal with the family parcel map then. So that brings us now to public hearings. As the director suggested, although it's not listed first on our agenda, the ECD Holdings really should have been first since it is old business. And so I would invite a staff report on ECD Holdings.
All right, we're in the process of sharing our PowerPoint. Chair Levy, members of the commission, good evening. Stephen Santos presenting the ECD Holdings Incorporated conditional use permit. There it is. So the project is located in the McKinleyville area. It takes access from a privately maintained road, Hooven Road, which is approximately 2/3 of a mile long, which intersects with Dow Prairie Road, which is county maintained. The roughly 16-acre legal parcel has a general plan designation of rural agriculture and a zoning of agriculture general. This project is for a conditional use permit to add approximately 33,000 square feet of new mixed light cultivation to an approved project. The existing entitlements on the property include 10,000 square feet of mixed light, 4,400 square feet of indoor, as well as on-site processing. So if approved, there'll be a total of 1 acre of mixed light in addition to the pre-existing entitlements. The project includes a 10% ancillary nursery and some project modifications to consolidate the mixed light, as well as accessory structures for things like storage. The estimated annual water usage is just over 600,000 gallons, which translates to about 11.6 gallons per square foot per year. The PowerPoint shows what the proportional breakdown is. There's 3 irrigation water sources. About half will come from reclaimed water from AC units and dehumidifiers. About 1/3 will come from a groundwater well, and about 20% from rainwater catchment. The previously approved project approved a point of diversion, a spring for irrigation. The spring will be discontinued as part of this project. There is existing water storage on site of approximately 110,000 gallons. There is a condition of approval proposed to dedicate a minimum of 116 gallons for the rainwater catchment portion, as well as requiring the applicant to provide a water use and storage plan for the reclaimed water piece of the irrigation budget. Power is provided by PG&E, and if this project is approved, the entire operation would be required to migrate to a renewable energy program. Per the biological assessment provided by the applicant, pre-construction surveys are recommended if there's construction between March 15th and August 15th, as well as developing and maintaining areas of native plants for bumblebees. And all of those recommendations from the biological assessment were incorporated into the conditions of approval. Here's a zoom in to what the proposed project will look like at build out with the acre of mixed light consolidated into a single structure in about the center of the project area. This project is in the McKinleyville community planning area. So a notice of application was sent out within 1,000 feet of the property and Hooven Road. The applicant also sent out their own outreach letter to neighbors, which is included in the packet. And staff received written comments and phone calls, and all the written comments are incorporated into attachment 6 of the packet. These next few slides will go through summarizing what the concerns were. There was some concerns expressed about the groundwater well. The applicant provided evidence that the well is unlikely connected to surface water, nor will impact nearby wells. And staff analysis concluded that the well use will not exceed 6% of the annual groundwater recharge occurring on the property. There were some general concerns about light and odor. The commenter that I spoke to about concerns about light pollution, I asked them if they've ever seen light pollution in the last 5 years since the project was, original project was approved. They said no. And so I also checked our records and found no complaints on these topics. There is a condition of approval recommended by staff to install odor control measures in the new building because it was expressed as a concern. And the original project had that condition of approval as well. So it seems sensible to carry that condition of approval over as well. There was public comment at the Planning Commission hearing last month that a civil engineer is not a qualified professional to conduct the well analysis that we received. And staff's response to that is that a civil engineer is a qualified professional. In fact, civil engineers are recognized by the State Water Board under the board's cannabis policy as being qualified to evaluate whether springs are connected to surface waters. We also received some comment that the use of heaters should not be allowed in uninsulated structures. I wasn't able to find any general plan policy or zoning regulations that prohibit the use of heaters. And the most recent update to the California Energy Code, January 1st, 2023, actually looked at this issue and establishes criteria of when greenhouses can be conditioned and sets forth criteria. So that energy code criteria applies to all greenhouses in the state. So that was not, that prohibition, that requested prohibition was not included as a condition of approval. The majority of the comments received really centered around concerns of Hooven Road and about just the functional capacity of the road, as well as the amount of traffic and the speed in which vehicles were traveling. One of the commenters provided data from their security camera, and we compared it and translated that into average daily trips and found that to be within what is normal for a rural residential area. There is a condition of approval to install speed limit signs to reduce the amount of dust that is being created and to have mandatory employee training regarding to that speed limit. And there's also a condition of approval requiring the applicant to make another attempt to form a road maintenance association. They already made one attempt under the original permits and wasn't successful because all the neighbors didn't want to join. Or alternatively, if an RMA can still not be formed, that they must pay a fair and proportional share of the costs in the absence of the RMA. In response to the public comments, and the applicant has already taken some measures to address some of these concerns and address some of these proposed conditions of approval. At least 3 speed limit signs have been posted. One commenter requested that there be a mirror at the top of one of the hills and one of the curves, and so the mirror was installed, I think, the 3rd week of February. And then some maintenance activities have occurred since receiving those comments. Therefore, staff is recommending the commission consider the final EIR for the CCLUO and the addendum for the project, make all the required findings for approval per Humboldt County Code, and adopt the resolution approving the ECD project and the conditional use permit and the conditions of approval. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Santos. Before we go to public comment, beginning with the applicant, if they wish, just want to see if any commissioners have any initial questions for staff on that staff report. Commissioner Scavdall.
a couple questions. One, you said it's going to be one building. Is that what you're saying?
The mixed light will be consolidated into a single building, yes, but there'll be some other accessory structures like storage and office space.
So that building is on a bit of a sloped hillside, so there's going to be a fair amount of grading associated with that. I assume there'll be a grading permit required and to do that?
Yes, they'll have to comply with the county's grading ordinance.
Okay, because it's probably about 20 feet across there, at least 20, 25 foot from one side of the building to the other. So,
I'd have to look at the dimensions
Okay.
on the site plan to confirm
Okay.
that.
my other question is, have we ever, they do make, and there are environmentally friendly dust control products that you can apply. Have we ever required that or made that a condition of approval? They're generally applied from a water truck, and they help bind up the fine materials on the surface of the road to prevent dust.
I have not for any of the projects that I've worked on, but it doesn't mean that we have not on other projects that I'm not familiar with.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions at this point for, yes, Commissioner Kiriazi?
Thank you for that report. I have a question on, in the conditions, number A7. I was curious what adequate and appropriate odor mitigation means in terms of, is that basically, the county waits for a complaint to happen?
There are all kinds of different technologies that are available, and on the front end, there's no way for me to identify what is going to be the best and the cost effective. So essentially, you are correct that it's up to them to install the one that's appropriate for the area that it's going in. An area that has processing might require different odor mitigation from an area that's having flowering. But our safety net is that if odors do escape and are detected, that we will receive that complaint and investigate.
If I could add to that, Chair, normally that's reviewed prior to issuance of permits, so that they would come in with odor mitigation technology that they're going to use as part of the building permit package, and then that would be implemented at that time. So it's not that they just go out and do something and we wait and see if we get complaints. We're looking at it before we're issuing construction permits.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the clarification. I do have a couple of other points.
Okay.
Or one is there's a condition B9, and I was curious why that was. Let's see, B9 is fully containing compost piles, and I was curious if that should be part of section C, where it's ongoing operation requirement.
It's both. There's a little bit of an art form when staff designs the conditions of approval. I elevated it to section B so it wasn't a generic ongoing condition, because that was, if I recall correctly, one of CDFW's comments. So I wanted to bring a little bit more of emphasis to that condition. That's why I put it in section B.
And then I have one more. I appreciate this. A lot of this is also just sort of educating me on a lot of this stuff, so thank you. My last question would be on C4, should there be a similar requirement regarding, which applies to noise and lighting, should there also be a requirement for odor? Sort of applies to that same, like, how do we follow up with that requirement?
Yeah, I typically don't include that as an ongoing condition, but it would be subject to the exact same process as described in the ordinance in terms of the time frame we have to investigate and respond, and the applicant has to respond to it.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Good questions. Anything else before we start public comment? We will, of course, have more time to discuss, ask questions of staff, et cetera. But with that, we'll open public comment, and as is our protocol, we begin by offering the applicant or their agent the chance to speak. You can have up to 15 minutes, but it'd be great if you could keep it to no more than 10.
No problem. Good evening, Chair Levy, and through the chair of the commission and staff. As always, I appreciate all of your community service and support to the community. I wanted to thank and acknowledge staff and the hard work that they do to document all of the requirements to show that we're compliant with our local rules and regulations. And in this case, Mr. Santos for helping prepare the report. And I believe that it is common practice for staff to do such a good job. I wanted to acknowledge that the applicant here worked hand in hand with my organization to help bring to you a project today that meets the fair argument standard and practices that have been established here at the Planning Commission and by the participating public. And I feel like we tried to bring that to you, project that recognizes all the standards and commitments in the community. And I wanted to just identify that the applicant has been very proactive in working with his neighborhood and community, and wanted him to present and tell you a little bit about his business. That's all I really have to start with, and we want to be able to have the opportunity to rebuttal and answer any questions as they come up through the evening. So thank you, and with that, I'll have Cody Strauss, the owner of the, or the applicant here, give a couple comments.
Thanks, Praj.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I know it's the evening. I think this is typical, but appreciate everybody's service. My name is Cody Strauss. Northern Emeralds was founded in 2015 here in Humboldt County. We have been steadily employing at least 65 people year-round. We provide full medical coverage and health benefits to everybody that works for us and sometimes their families. Our ethos here is really to make something beautiful. Our goal as both as a company and a culture within our company is to make something beautiful. We've done our best over the years to participate and contribute to our community. Previously, we've done years of volunteer work for Friends of the Dunes. We had an Adopt a Highway program that we maintained for several years on the 299. And I'll keep it brief, but we've really done our best to create a good community within our organization and without, and really bring something special to the California market and represent Humboldt the best way we can. So thank you for your consideration. I know it's a complicated process, and yeah, just appreciate being here with you tonight.
Thank you. And yes, go ahead.
One other thing too, to clarify, our employees, the vast majority of them work out of our facility in Arcata. So we do all our centralized processing, distribution in an industrial zone there. So there really is a very minority amount of people coming out to the Hooven property. Yep.
Thanks. Sure. I will, as Mr. White suggested, you're entitled to come back up after all public comment if there's anything you wanted to rebut or explain or answer. And in addition, if commissioners have questions for you, we might ask you to come back up later.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, with that, then we will continue with other public comment, beginning with those in the audience here. So if any of you are wishing to comment on this project, now would be the time for you to come up, and you can have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Ballard Riley. I live at the end of Hooven Road. The large farm that you can see in the parcel maps is where we live. We have lived here on Hooven Road for 17 years, farming produce for our local community. We do 8 farmers markets per week, sell to local restaurants. We have raised 5 children on our property there at the end of Hooven Road that are a part of our community, that will be, the decisions that are made here tonight will influence definitely their futures as well. So I really keep them in the forefront of my mind, our children. We live on a very small one-way road that from the house, the house that was, it's called Ben Shepherd's house. Ben Shepherd was very integral in like helping us get our farm started, and he was a great neighbor. But from that house to our house down below is a very small, actually an easement. It's not a road, and it was just serving our traffic alone, and now it's become quite a bit more of an impact of traffic with all of his workers coming down that way. 2 years ago, my child was biking to school at 8 a.m. and was hit with a head-on, flying over the hood of one of Cody's workers onto the windshield. And we are still dealing with the repercussions of that situation. His letter that you received and that they sent out, he says that, Cody, I really have tried to be a good neighbor, but he doesn't live there anymore. It is a vacation rental, so he's not really a neighbor. And unfortunately, I see light leakage every once in a while. The ocean that I once heard is drowned out by fans. And I just kind of accepted that as is. But with the quadrupling of this business is what brings me here, and the impact that Northern Emerald has had on our precious rural ag land. Prime ag land is rough to see the degradation, but.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you respecting the time limit. Next commenter, please. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Derek Calvano, Humboldt County resident and employee of ECD Inc. Northern Emeralds. I've worked at the company for the past 5 years. I started as an entry-level position, coming off of years of working in the industry in our beautiful county, and it was the first position that I've held where I've been given numerous opportunities to grow within an organization. Starting from an entry-level position, I've worked my way up through seeing the HR department to now overseeing majority of our operations. And I've never once, never before have I worked for an organization that truly took the time to care for their employees, for our community, and just to create a sustainable, long-lasting company that just tries to give back and make a beautiful product like Cody had mentioned earlier. So I'm simply just here, just grateful for that opportunity and to just show my support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Robin Dunleavy. I run the processing department of Northern Emeralds in Arcata. I manage 15 people that love coming to work every day. I, like Derek, started packaging and putting stickers on, and now I've had the opportunity to be a manager. It has allowed me, this company has allowed me the chance to raise my kids with dignity and grace, and we run a really tight ship there. We are very conscious of the community and following the federal guidelines. It's just been an amazing place to work. Cody is a very lovely person, and every person that works for Northern Emeralds actually cares about the community and all of my coworkers. So I'm just here to support my company. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eno Riley, and I live at the end of the road also at the farm that Lauren lives at. We got the letter a couple weeks ago or a month ago about the proposed expansion, and I was quite shocked, as the prior conversation I'd had with Cody was about him acquiring 4 or 5 acres of our land to do a split so we could have 2 10-acre parcels. His reasoning was that he needed to save some money on his property interest rate loan, and that if he could get the house separated from this cannabis loan, that he would be saving some amount of money. I think he said maybe $100,000, and that he was offering that, a part of that, to purchase this 4 or 5 acres of our land so he could split it into 2 parcels. And I said that that seemed like a very low amount of money and that, wasn't really going to work. He said that since he wasn't planning on doing any cannabis expansions or any real estate development, that there wasn't really any value in this 4 or 5 acres of land. So when I got the letter, I honestly felt quite deceived, and I felt like who was once a very amiable and friendly neighbor was trying to kind of create some kind of deception and getting me to sell a significant amount of land for, I assume, less than $70,000. 5 acres of land is, worth significantly more than that. So at that point, I realized that, I didn't really know the real story, and that, I'm really glad that I didn't go ahead and do this. It didn't seem like an honest or straightforward thing to me. I always thought I had the respect of my neighbor, and I thought that it was, we had a good relationship, and I assumed that he would have come to me and said, hey, I'm doing this development. Because then I find out that the lot split was removed from his application after all of his neighbors said that they didn't want to sell it to him. So that's what I heard back from the email I got, and I do apologize for not remembering. I think it's Clifford, maybe, who sent the email back saying, oh, that lot split was removed. So other than that, I thought I had the respect and kind of like communication with the neighbor. I realized I don't. And that's concerning, just to know that, we don't really know the truth of what our neighbor's doing or what they're interested in. My other concern is the road going down to our section. The end of the road is very narrow, and it's really only 1 lane. It's over 200 feet, and every day we drive down it, and we have to stop, and we get caught there multiple times a day. We don't think it's really wide enough with the large trees that are there, and there's really prime habitat for mushrooms. So we really were requesting that he remove this long kind of angular section to go straight from his main gate down. It'll be a lot straighter.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, thank you all for your time. My name is Tanasa Daniel. I've worked at Northern Emeralds for 4 years, and this is a very, very, very great company to work at. We try very hard every day to work within our community. We've tried to work with all the neighbors. A couple rebuttals, just a few things he brought up. So the small part of the road he's talking about is actually an easement on our property that they travel through for their farm. But they have another access point that they could go and not have to travel through there. And that accident, we actually have the CHP report to say who was at fault. They said that the kid got hit, and it was actually the kid's fault. But we've really, really, really tried hard to work on this road. We've widened, the roads. Any concern we take to heart, because we love this community and everybody involved. So anything that anyone ever has, we try to work with them, try to help and do the best we can every day so that we can stay employed. So we really care about this company. And this expansion is only adding 4 employees. We're just consolidating. We're not quadrupling. We're adding 4 employees. So I hope that you approve it, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon or evening. My name is Mark. I've been working for Northern Emeralds for the past 5 years, primarily at the Hooven site. I've seen a lot of growth over the time at my employment there. I absolutely love working there. I hope that you guys approve this so that there's a future for the company and for myself. I just had a 6-month son that would love to have an employed dad, and I would just thank you for your time, and hopefully, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wishing to comment on ECD Holdings?
Hello. My name is Nicole Raman Garnier, and very much like my counterparts, Robin Dunleavy and Derek Calvano, I started in the trenches in ECD about 5 years ago. In that time, I've been given multiple opportunities to grow with the company. They're near and dear to my heart personally because I'm a widow, and this is the first company that really gave me bereavement pay. I never received that at any other job that I've had in Humboldt County. I've been here for almost 20 years. That meant volumes to me. I believe that they support their community, they support their employees, they support their people, and they show me love like I have not experienced before. So I thank you for your time, for listening to us and hearing us all out, and I'm really looking forward to getting this approved. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wishing to comment? Okay, seeing no other hands, we will close the in-person portion of public comments, although I will allow the applicant to come back up at the end if he wishes. But we'll now turn to Zoom or phone. Are there anyone on Zoom or phone wishing to comment? I do see one hand up now, Public 7108. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes. *6 to unmute.
Okay, thank you.
There we go.
Yes, my comments are kind of focused on the CDFW request as a condition of approval that the applicant limits the use of heaters to the nurseries or insulated structures. This is going to be an acre of mixed light in enclosed structures using fans, dehumidifiers, air conditioning, heaters, and lights, which I would imagine is all the same equipment used in the 4,400 square foot indoor. So to grow your 5 cycles using all this energy in uninsulated structures, to me, is it's actually indoor in a greenhouse. So I think that's something I would like the Planning Commission to think about. And guess that was my big thing, is having all this equipment being used, all this energy consumed, because you're growing them in the greenhouses. And I just wonder if it would be less energy used if they were actually indoor grows. And sometimes I hope there's some kind of measurement of how much energy is used for these operations. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom or phone wishing to comment on this project? ECD Holdings. Okay, then I will close the Zoom and phone public comment. I will offer the applicant or his agent a chance to come up for up to 3 more minutes if you wish to respond to any comments you heard.
Thank you, Chair, and through the Chair of the Commission. I think that what we heard was concerns on the road, and that there'll be 4 employee increase to use of that road, and concern over the heat and use of electricity in the project. You know, the project is committed and conditioned to join the RCEA energy program, which I believe really propagates RCEA being able to go get more renewable energy and provide that to the community. And so I just wanted to put that light on that comment. We're here and available to respond to any questions or comments you have, but I don't think we have any other rebuttal we'd like to add.
Commissioner Scavdell?
Could we pull up the site plan? I have a couple of questions. Maybe start with the existing site plan and then the new site plan. Can you go to, that's the new site plan. Can you go to the existing site plan first, please? It's like, yeah, it's on the left-hand side of that sheet. Go back up. Up one page. Left-hand side. Yeah, so I think we're just missing the residence. It's just up at the top if you scoot up a little bit. But my questions are, so there's the existing residence. The parcel lines are the dark lines shown around the outside. And the new building, scroll back down a little bit. There's a hillside, so about where that lettering says spring diversion, and then there's a hillside going, those contours are going like downhill to the existing structures down at the bottom. Okay, now can you go over to the new site plan? So there's a new parcel line there. What's that?
That is an artifact of the original application. To be clear, a proposed subdivision is not a part of this project and not being proposed. So the line work that you're seeing there is just an artifact from the original project materials and not being proposed tonight.
Okay, because a member of the public talked about a subdivision or a lot split, so I just want to be clear. So there's not a lot split proposed there.
Correct.
Okay. So then you can see the new building, which is 43,560 square feet, and so that's one building. And then there's a road that's going around that building. There's no detail or no thought in here yet on, and I understand this is just, we're in preliminary stages here, but there's a significant amount of grading that's going to be required on that hillside to fit that building in there. Have you thought about that and what we're going to do to prevent erosion and manage the drainage and figure out how to get that road in there and get this building in there?
Absolutely. I believe that, I'm not sure if it's in the staff report, but there were some preliminary grading plans prepared to show that. I am not sure if, Mr. Santos, if they're in this plan or not, but there is grading. As you mentioned that earlier, I looked at the grading plan that we have on the laptop, and it is about 13 feet of excavation, and we end up spreading that out on the high side and on the low side, kind of splitting the grading quantities, so we're kind of balancing on site. And that the conceptual plan shows the grading pad, shows the slope up, and the new road is intended to help show or provide access to the cultivation area separate from disrupting the resident. And so it has been thought out. I would imagine we had at some point submitted that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it wasn't in our packet, so that's why I'm asking the question. So thank you.
Okay, yes.
I was just curious how that was going to.
I mean, we had a topography that we created, we set up, and then we laid in the building, and then we checked the grades, found out balance point, and saw that it would work and have a conceptual plan for grading.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Mulder, did you have a question for Mr. White?
Through the chair, just to clarify I heard concerns about energy usage. The mixed light, you will be restricted to 25 watts per square foot, is that correct?
That is the maximum the state allows for mixed light cultivation, correct?
Okay, and for the indoor that's on site, that is allowed much more wattage per square foot, is that still correct?
That is very correct.
All right, thank you. One other follow-up question. I heard testimony about a concern of a 200-foot strip of road where people constantly, a narrow section of road. Is it possible to maybe put in a pole out there to avoid people having to back up 200 feet if there is that much traffic on the road, or is that kind of, you'd have to cut trees and take away habitat?
I had one of the staff members at our office go out just in the past couple of weeks and went and measured dimensions along the way, looked at the opportunities for putting in pullouts and moving vegetation and maintaining drainage. And the report is included in the staff report, and all the recommendations therein have been added to this project. And I know that some maintenance to the road had already occurred, but there is a full assessment from one end to the other requiring turnouts and widening in order to meet, we already have a roadway that functions as it is. People look out for each other, and we're adding 4 folks to that traffic flow, and we're providing quite a bit of opening up the road, widening, and turnouts at all of the pinch points.
And that would happen if this was approved?
That is correct.
All right, thank you for that.
Any other questions for the applicant's agent or the applicant? I guess I just have one quick one. Speaking of roads, there was a mention of a narrow stretch of road that the one of the neighbors mentioned, and then one of the ECD employees or Northern Emerald's employees said that's actually not the access road. That's an easement across their property. I just wanted across your property, I should say. I just wanted to be clear. Could you explain that a little bit better?
I think that's best answered by the owner, and would ask Cody to answer that question.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So if I understand, you're asking about the 200-foot road and the easement on that. So is that correct?
The access.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't sure if we were talking about the main access road or some other road that's like an alternative and one alternative access to the neighbor's property.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we could pull up the plan, I could show you guys. But yes, that easement is on our property. It's through our property, and that's where the Rileys access their farm. If you notice or you remember, the plans allow for another driveway. That essentially gives us a ability to use either entrance directly to access the cultivation. So
the new road that you're putting in.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So in other words, it would relieve, if I understand you, it would relieve some of the traffic that your employees were using that road that the neighbors also use to access. It would reroute them to another access route?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's parallel to what we used previously, and yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there's no other questions, then we thank you so much for coming up, and
okay, thank you.
And I will now close public comment and bring it back to the commission for further discussion or questions. Oh, yes, sure. Commissioner Mulder.
Through the chair to staff, I heard one comment about the applicant not living on site. I did not see in anything I read here that would require the applicant to live on site, and I didn't try digging for the old project or reach out, but that is not a requirement of the ordinance or this project. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is not a requirement of the ordinance, and it's not a condition of approval of this project or the approved project.
Okay, thank you for that.
Commissioner McFarland.
Is use of that road that the owner just mentioned, the additional road they're adding, will that be a requirement to use it, or is the business able to use both the current existing, which would create the potential traffic problems, and the new one?
To the gate of the project property, there's one road, and the recommended improvements and maintenance that are in the road evaluation by the engineer must be completed, and documentation given to the Planning and Building Department to the satisfaction of the department must occur before the project commences.
Okay. And then there was a comment about the owners of the neighboring property do technically have another way to access their property if a road is put in. Was that legitimate? Have you looked into that?
I have not looked into that because the neighboring property is not within the scope of this project.
Yes, Commissioner Kiriazi.
One question to the staff. I was curious if the road maintenance elements should be added to the operations plan. I think they were absent in the current operations plan.
The requirement to attempt to form a road maintenance association is a condition of approval of the conditional use permit. We typically don't see that in an operations plan submitted by the applicant because the operations plan is describing sort of their day-to-day operation and how they conduct their business. But it is part of this project.
Thank you. I guess maybe to clarify, it sounds like the conditions of approval point to implementing the recommendations in the road assessment, and there's a number of maintenance recommendations. And so do they have to form an road maintenance association for those to be implemented? Or if that's not done, are they responsible for it? And if they're responsible for it, should it go in the operations plan?
Through the chair, excellent question. Certainly from the applicant's perspective, it's ideal to have that RMA in place to share the burden of those improvements. But if that's not possible, the applicant must do all of those improvements and maintenance as described for those 14 road points that are in the engineer road evaluation. Those must be completed prior to this project commencing, no matter what.
Including, I guess if I understand your question, the follow-up maintenance of those improvements that may be required in future. That's sort of implicit in the condition of approval?
Absolutely, because in the road evaluations, and it should be pointed out, there's actually been 2 road evaluations by engineers.
Right.
One was done for the original project, and that is still in place, and those recommendations must be met. There's a lot of overlap between those recommendations and some of the maintenance recommendations, but it's clear what recommendations are. You need to install this turnout versus you have some ongoing maintenance in these particular road points. Both, all of those are all incorporated into the conditions of approval.
Thank you. Other questions or thoughts? Yes, Commissioner Scabdell.
Just some comments. As I mentioned earlier, I did have the opportunity to go out there. It is clear that somebody is maintaining or attempting to maintain the road. It's in reasonably good condition for winter time.
Mm-hmm.
Brush was cut back. There are a few potholes, but it was in pretty good condition. The site itself, well, is obviously it's very clean. Looks well organized, like a well-run business. We heard from several employees that testify to that as well. The lower section of the road, there are a couple of residences that are fairly close to the road, and I would like to see some sort of dust mitigation, perhaps application of again, there are EPA-approved products. They're basically put on from a water truck and could be applied a couple times a year to help mitigate dust in the lower section of the road. So I think that could help.
I appreciate that suggestion. So I was going to ask about that actually. A couple times a year of application will do the trick or make a difference for that?
Yeah, yes, I think it would.
And to be clear, you're not necessarily suggesting it be the entire length of the access road? Or
no,
road.
It's the lower section before you actually get to where they installed the mirror. There's like a little hillside piece. It might help stabilize that section as well, but the area that's impacted by dust, I think, is the first, few hundred feet of road.
Right. Sure. Okay. Commissioner Kiriazi.
I do have one more, I think, just general comment. I want to acknowledge and recognize that it sounds like there was a collision with a person, a child on this road. And just recognizing that this can be one of the challenges around having a business operate in an area where there are residences. I also want to flag that while the police report puts the responsibility of that on the bicyclist. I think there tends to be a pattern where in collisions of vehicles with bicyclists and pedestrians, we tend to blame the bicyclist or the pedestrian. So I don't know of any sort of action we can take on this other than I wanted to go onto record to encourage these business owners to recognize they're in a residential area and to respect people walking or biking on this road.
Thank you. Yeah, very, very well said. Commissioner West.
Well, I am prepared to support staff's recommendation, but it sounds like we might have some addition to the conditions of approval that some of our commissioners might be interested in adding.
If I could, I offer a condition that would read, the applicant shall cause to be applied at least twice a year to the lower portion of the road, an EPA-approved substance to bind the road surface to minimize dust. Evidence of this application shall be provided at the time of the annual inspection.
You always have a way of putting it into words. Thank you. Commissioner Scavdell, does that? Yeah. Commissioner West.
Commissioner Kiriazi, did you have any additional conditions of approval that you were interested in?
I don't. Thank you for asking.
Commissioner Mulder.
So, previous past practice, if we're looking at adding conditions of approval, we usually will bring the applicant up and see if that's something they would be willing to abide by or agree with.
Or if there's, yeah.
Or
Sure.
if they have, so I would just see if you would be willing to invite the applicant up,
Yeah,
just
that-
to make sure we follow the same practice we've done in other.
That is the practice we try to follow. So yes, please, Mr. Strauss. What is your reaction to that proposed additional condition?
Absolutely. Yep, no, not a problem. We attempted to source it previously, and there's a nationwide shortage. And one of our neighbors who is affected by it the most is here in support with us. So we would definitely like to make his life as comfortable as possible. So yes, no problem.
Thank you. And I thank you also for, we see evidence that you've already installed some 5-mile-an-hour signs. I understand it's part of your employee training, and, you know, given the discussion we've had, whoever may have been at fault, it's you never want to have a car running into a bicycle. So anything you can do to prevent any impacts to bikes and pedestrians would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, the driver in the accident is a father of 4, ex-military mechanic. Stopped the vehicle, but it was a hill, and yeah, there was not a lot that he could have done. But absolutely, we do. We want to take care of everybody, and we'll do that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner West.
I'll go ahead and motion that we approve staff's recommendation with the additional condition that Director Forward added in with the language on the dust mitigation.
We have a motion from Commissioner West. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I think it was a tie. I'm going to give it.
I'll pass.
Commissioner O'Neill as the second then. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that before we vote? Why don't we take a roll call vote on this one then?
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Kiriazi,
Well done. Yes.
Commissioner McFarland.
Abstain.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention. And so the ECD Holdings project is approved with the recommended conditions and the 1 additional condition. Thank you. And thanks to all who came and commented both now and in the last meeting on both sides of this issue. We do appreciate your input. Thank you. I think with that, maybe we should take our 10-minute break, since we usually do that between 7 and 7:30. So let's go into recess for 10 minutes and be back at 7:14, please. We live? Okay. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, reconvening our meeting. We now go to the next item under public hearings, which is the Eureka's Redwood Christian Center sign replacement. And I would welcome a staff report whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. Good evening. This is Steve Lazar. I'm the sign planner for this project, and I am sharing screen right now, if we can bring that up. Okay, thank you. So this next item is a modification of a conditional use permit to allow for the replacement of a sign that was damaged. And this is after the fact approval of a sign that was already replaced, as I'll get into briefly. The applicant for this project is the property owner and occupant, Eureka's Redwood Christian Center. Okay, let's see if it goes now. There we go. So this is a summary of sort of what's going on here. So to the right is a visual rendering of the sign. It is a replacement of an earlier a lawful non-conforming sign that was damaged in 2019. The sign was erected in 2020 without permit. It came to our attention through a code enforcement complaint. And at that point, we contacted the owners and their contractor, and they applied for the use permit modification that we're processing. The sign that has been constructed is a freestanding monument sign, much like the one that it's replacing, double-sided with sign facing of 82 square feet, 41 square feet per side, and it's approximately 14 feet tall and includes an LED screen. This slide shows the location of the property where the sign has been constructed. You can see it's in the lower portion of Humboldt Hill, Spruce Point in the distance, and South Broadway. It is in an area where you see sort of a transition from the commercial corridors along Ike Road and Lower Humboldt Hill, and then into the neighborhood of the Humboldt Hill subdivision. The sign you can see here that's a Google Earth rendering of the prior sign that's been replaced. And I'll show some pictures of both just to familiarize the commission and the public. This is a contemporary aerial photo showing the current sign and its location. In terms of land use and zoning, the property is split by the coastal zone, but it is both the coastal and non-coastal portions are zoned for residential uses. The land use designation in the coastal zone is for resource dependent. That references the rear of the property. You'll see in this next slide. This is just to show that the property is not actually, or the project that we're dealing with tonight is not in the coastal zone. That's why we're only dealing with the use permit. We feel fairly confident based on the official coastal jurisdiction maps that the front of the property where the sign is located is clearly outside of the coastal zone. This is a picture showing the existing, or the prior sign that was damaged. It is a pertinent sign. In our current sign regulations, as I believe came to your attention during the recent meetings on the amendments to the sign regulations, appurtenant signs in residential zoning districts are not an allowed use. That is going to change should the amendments that were passed on by the commission be approved in their current fashion. The church itself is considered a quasi-public use, and quasi-public uses are allowed in all zoning districts. In some zoning districts, such as residential zones, they require a use permit. No use permit was granted originally for the church because of the time that it was built. But in 2001, when the church was looking to do an expansion of the facility, we processed a use permit at that time because it was subject to the current rules. So the church was established in 1965. The applicants tells me that the sign was constructed around that time. I tried to do some investigation into it with the assessor's office. Unlike buildings, they don't maintain records for sign structures. They're kind of viewed as more ephemeral. And I think something was lost, but I think it's fair to say that it may track back to the original time of the church. Regardless, it was clearly there in 2001 when the use permit was approved by the Planning Commission. So we think it clearly qualifies as a lawful non-conforming sign. It is located in the front yard setback. You can see it's very close to the back of the sidewalk. So 20 feet would be the standard residential front setback. So it's non-conforming in a couple different ways. It's non-conforming with respect to setbacks, making it a non-conforming structure, and the sign itself is a non-conforming use because it's not allowed in the zoning district in which it's located. This is a 1997 aerial photo showing the sign location. And then here's a 2023 aerial, and you can see it. The new sign is in exactly the same location. And then here we have a comparison of the new and the old sign, the new sign up on the top and or new sign on the bottom, the old sign on the top. And here side by side, you can kind of see for comparison purposes, the location and size. So as I mentioned, a zoning ordinance, it's common to have provisions for grandfathering uses or structures that don't meet the regulations, and ours are no different. Ours are very, I think, permissive in that they allow structures to remain and be maintained and then don't require phasing out or sunset. In the case of this sign, there's a provision in the non-conforming regulations that allow for reconstruction if something is damaged, if a tree falls on it, if struck by lightning or struck by a vehicle. The zoning ordinance allows you to rebuild within 2 years of the event. And they did that, they just didn't do it in the right fashion. They applied for the permit after the sign had already been constructed. So where we start to kind of diverge is we believe that the new sign is an intensification of the nonconformance because of the type of nature of the sign. The old sign, as you could see in the photos I showed, it was a traditional monument sign with external illumination. The copy was fixed, and so this, by creating this new, more modern version, that is increasing the degree of the sign, and in terms of its sophistication, illumination, and potential for potential nuisance. So, in that regard, we've already received complaints from neighboring property owners. There is a mixed opinion. I did a site visit, or I was in the neighborhood and actually talked to someone who lived on probably the closest parcel to the actual church, and asked them their opinion of the sign, thinking that they would be the most likely to be not favorable of it, and they had no concerns whatsoever. So it's not like everyone sees eye to eye on these types of things, but from a technical standpoint, staff believes that this is an increase in nonconformance, and therefore it really shouldn't be authorized because it's not allowed. The sign is a nonconforming use. It gets to remain in its current intensity. So to that end, we've added a condition to the recommended conditions of approval, which requires that the applicant and the property owners substitute the portion of the sign that is the kind of principal area of increase in nonconformance, the LED reader board, remove that and replace it with conventional sign copy that can be illuminated, but from an external source, much like the original sign. And that, we believe, is kind of a happy medium. It allows them to keep the structure that's been built, but augments it in a way that keeps it more akin to what was there before. We did receive a video from the complainant, and I think it was included as a link to the staff report in case anyone didn't get to see it. It's not a very long video, so I'll just quickly show it here. This is when the sign was in operation, and showing it at night. And videos can be dramatic when it comes to these types of things, but I think it's safe to say that it was a bright sign, and that's one of the concerns. And I think it's worth noting that these types of signs can be adjusted, but what you're seeing there is what it was like when it was in operation. So we are recommending the commission approve the project. We believe it's exempt from environmental review. There's several different exemption types that it qualifies under. The Class 1 and Class 2 exemptions cover existing facilities, their maintenance, and also their replacement and reconstruction. And given the location of where the sign is and the general size and nature, we believe those are fitting exemptions. As I mentioned, we've received public comments both in support and opposition to the proposal. The applicant circulated a petition. You'll see it was included as part of attachment 5 of the staff report. We also received letters of support from neighboring property owners. We haven't, to my knowledge, received any additional public comments since the packets were circulated and published with the agenda. So with that, our recommendation is that the commission approve the project, but subject to the condition number 4 as identified in the attachment 1A. It would allow for the sign to remain, but would require that the LED reader board portion be removed and replaced with a more conventional externally illuminated sign component. And I think one thing I maybe had on the slide, but I forgot to mention is in reviewing the last hearing on the sign regulations, it seemed pretty clear that the commission landed on recommending that LED reader boards not be allowed under the amendments. In that regard, requiring its removal would ensure that after the new regulations were adopted, it would be in conformance with the code, should it look like what was passed along to the board. So I think that's important to note as well, and as a basis for our recommendation tonight. So with that, I'll end my presentation and be open to any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Lazar. Yes, questions?
I wanted to just make sure I understood if you voted on this, yes or no, what you're voting on. So if you said no to this, would it be tore down? Or if you said yes, you're voting to leave it but require these changes so that it's not illuminated at night like it was in the video? Is that, am I making?
The last thing you mentioned, if you say yes, it would be to allow it to remain but be changed in the way that I outlined.
So if you said no, what would happen?
Then we'd need a new motion on the floor for reconsidering something different, like removal or some other.
Other questions at this time for staff? Yes, Commissioner Mulder.
Just clarification, this was originally under a conditional use permit, so there is some sort of non-conforming entitlement for that sign area. Is that correct or incorrect?
The original sign was constructed before a use permit was required. When the rules changed, I would say when the sign was precisely zoned in 1982, around that time, or when the area where the sign's located was precisely zoned, it became legal non-conforming. At the time that we approved the use permit for expansion and modifications to the church, we really were just covering that. The sign was already a lawful non-conforming structure, and it didn't change under that proposal. So it's a legal non-conforming structure under the code, but it is not covered under a use permit. We're modifying the use permit for the prior action that covered the church itself.
Director Ford?
Mr. Lazar, could you explain what would have happened had they just simply rebuilt the sign that was there?
If they rebuilt what was there in the same fashion and size, they wouldn't have required any permitting other than a building permit through the department.
Because there wouldn't have been an intensification.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner West.
Am I correct in understanding that no permits were pulled by the applicant or contractor when building the sign after it was hit?
Initially, there was no permits. They did make application after the code enforcement case was opened and learned at that time that a modification to the use permit was needed.
Thank you.
I have one question. I guess I'll just put it out there now. I understand entirely the recommendation and the argument that the new sign is an intensification, particularly because it is internally illuminated LED changeable display. But it's also a different structured, slightly different shape and size from the previous one, from the picture. So I guess I'm trying to understand more clearly if the staff recommendation is that the entire structure that now houses the sign be torn down and rebuilt more in the shape and fashion of the earlier, or if the internally illuminated and LED section simply be replaced with static face and external illumination.
Yeah, so to be clear, the recommendation is to allow the sign to remain in exactly the same construction and footprint and height and width and size. And it would just be to remove the LED reader board and replace it with copy that is of a more conventional signage. And the reason for why that, we did look at the comparison. You're right, it can be a little, it's not an one for one, but it's fairly close. In
Yeah.
some ways it's smaller and shorter, in some ways it's wider, but it occupies roughly the same footprint. So we didn't think that was too big of a stretch.
Right. Yeah, okay, thanks. Commissioner O'Neill.
So, do we know how the original one was damaged? Was it damaged by a vehicle accident?
It was damaged by a vehicle accident, and it was, I didn't see photos, but I asked the applicant or the property owners at the break, and they said it was completely leveled. And
So, if the LED board is removed, will there still be any illumination at all, external kind of illumination on this sign, or will it just be dark at night?
we think it's appropriate to allow illumination. The prior signage had electricity, so we're just saying not from an LED standpoint, but from
You could
displayed
have a light
against.
on it, but you
Correct,
couldn't.
yeah.
Is there a control as to how bright that light can be? Because, I mean, it seems like it could be a road hazard, particularly if there's been an accident that took out the last sign. And certainly from the video I saw, that would be very distracting.
The accident was actually a drunk driving incident, so it wasn't so much the signs. There was other things that were damaged that same evening, but it is okay to tighten up the language and the conditions if we want to add something to clarify the lighting intensity. I don't know that, I don't have anything.
I don't know how many people are reading church signs in the middle of the night when they're driving down the road anyway, so I really don't think they need the LED. That sign doesn't even, to me, look appropriate for the building that's there, but I would support your recommendation that the LED be removed, and that, I don't know enough about looms to know how bright it should be, but it should be a very, small illumination and not something that distracts from drivers. I know when I'm going home at night and there's all these construction LED boards going all over the place, it just has a tendency to draw you to that board, and it could have drove the drunk driver, I mean.
Yeah, I think when it comes, excuse, I apologize.
Yeah, of course.
Through the chair. So I think when it comes forward to making a motion, the commission could decide either to restrict put a cutoff on when lighting it must cease, or require a condition that makes it clear that the illumination shall not be distracting to motorists, and give staff and maybe Public Works a chance to review for conformance.
Because sometimes your eye gets drawn to that light, and you might, drive towards it. So I don't think it needs to be illuminated.
Well, I do want to get to public comment, beginning with the opportunity for the applicant or the applicant's agent to speak, and as is our custom, you're entitled to a longer time, up to 15 minutes if you need it, but hopefully 10 minutes is enough. So are you the applicant, or? Yes, then please come on up, sir.
Just start when I'm ready.
Go ahead, thank you.
Ready, thank you. My name is John Sampson. I'm the elder at Redwood Christian Center as of this last May. Many of the things that we're dealing with were done prior to me being voted in. The previous pastor had been there for 55 years. And the accident was very well publicized. It was the one that killed the individual on Humboldt Hill next door to us. He drove through our sign, through the fence, and into the bedroom of our neighbor. So he was highly intoxicated. He was restrained by several of the neighbors, and it was a bad scene. Just to give you a backup, I mean, not backup, but a reference for that. So the recommendations that I've heard so far are certainly, as far as dimming the sign, it can be done. As far as turning it off, my own personal thoughts, where we could just leave it on during daylight hours. We have, as a church, we've received no complaints about the sign. We didn't know it was bothering anybody. We didn't know anybody was offended, and we're certainly willing to work with the people. We know most of the people around us, and have a good relationship with them, so that's not an issue. Just a little background on the church and myself. I'm a local boy, 86, graduated St. Bernard's High School. Always wanted to be a pastor here and worked with a number of drug rehabs here locally. Started out working at the Lighthouse Ranch with their helping people with their substance abuse problems. I've been working with Teen Challenge, Rivet Adult Teen Challenge for 15 years. Been working with the Mountain of Mercy with their drug addiction program for over 15 years. I'm a recently retired juvenile correctional officer, juvenile probation officer. Again, worked with the drugs that are just tearing our county apart. It's my dream, my aspiration to help in that area, and the church is very much involved in with that aspect of our county, helping people get free of addiction through those, not only fundraising. We use the sign currently as advertising for that type of thing. We were using it, I'm sorry, before it was turned off. And to advertise, we're like any other business. It helps bring in finances for those outreaches. We supply clothing, food, housing. We also provide low-income housing for several people. The church is involved in that. And the advantage that the board does bring to the church is the ability to raise finance. We were able to advertise guest speakers. We're able to talk about fundraisers that we're doing through the board. This allows people to contribute to, as you well know, is something that's basically rotting our county from the inside out, and that's our drug addiction problem. I was trained by this county for 20 years as a correctional officer. I worked with 11550 training as far as dealing with drug use, and now I've taken that into the Christian realm, and we're doing things there, and we're going to be planning on doing a lot more. It's just a little spiel, I guess, maybe give you a reason to think about maybe letting us leave it turned on, at least during the daylight. Like the lady said, I agree. Nobody's reading that sign from by 9 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning. If the same people drive by the sign all day long, so they've seen it before, and we're willing to slow down I don't know what you would call it, but the screens, that way it's not so distracting, so it's not flipping through the screens so much. It certainly can be dimmed, and we're certainly willing to it also has a setting on it where you can just display the time, like, 9:30, and that barely puts off any light at all. But we could leave that on from, say, sunset till sunrise. We want to keep the sign, and we also want to work with all of you to, as best we can, I don't see any problems, but to be able to, like I said, keep it and not affect anyone's visual impairment. That would be our last desire, would be to affect someone's visual impairment going up and down that road, or to distract them. So there's a lot of things we can do. There's a lot of compromise we can make. There's a lot of middle ground we can come to. Obviously, if we have to, we have to. But it would be a disappointment for sure. I guess I had all these things written down. Now they seem kind of unimportant. So I guess that's all I got. So I guess I can't do that. You guys ask them up, don't you? So.
Yes, and we may have questions for you. If there's any questions right now, sure, go ahead, Commissioner Mulder, if you're willing to answer our questions.
Oh, absolutely,
Thank you.
yes.
Through the chair, in everything I heard you say, I just want to clarify, I kind of heard at the end there you were asking for a possibility of a way to try to keep the internal illumination in the sign, or did I mishear you?
No, you did not. I was just thinking during the daylight, we could slow the process of the turning pictures so it doesn't flip through them so fast. And then during the daylight, I don't think you're going to notice that it's very bright at all. It's not as distracting. I would argue it's not distracting at all.
Okay.
Yes, I'm making an appeal. I'm asking for mercy.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Other questions at this time for the applicant while we have him up there?
I just want to thank you for your work in that field. That's an area that's, I also work in for SUD, and it's important work. And I could change my mind if you didn't turn it on at night.
I would be absolutely thrilled not to turn that sign on at night, so.
Commissioner McFarland.
So just to confirm, you're willing to either turn the sign off completely at night, or were you had mentioned putting up a time clock and leaving that on during the night? Did you have
I am asking for
either?
Either one would be wonderful, so, yeah. And, It's on a timer, so we'd have to, obviously, as the time changes, we could adjust it, But basically from sunset is what I was thinking, from sunset to sunrise. So from can-see to can't see.
Okay. Just one more question while we have you, sir.
Yes, sir.
And you may not know the answer, since I believe you said you were not the pastor at the time when this was rebuilt.
I was the associate pastor for a time before that.
Just curious if the contractor you used ever mentioned the question of whether or not a permit would be required to change the sign in the way that he did.
We are dealing with that right now as a separate matter. We were led to inform that he did get the permits, but it turns out he did not. So, yeah, that's a separate matter we're dealing with. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, listen, thank you for your input. You have the right as the applicant to come back up after any other comments are made if you wish, or if we have other questions, we may ask you later in our discussion.
I just want to reiterate that I really appreciate this opportunity. I understand decisions have been made already, but I do appreciate this opportunity to come up and make my case. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, are there other members of the audience in the room who wish to comment on this project?
Hello,
Go ahead, sir, you have 3
Commissioners.
minutes.
Thank you. I actually prepared quite a bit of things I wanted to say, but based on what's been said here today and what the pastor, I'm sorry, I forgot your title wrong, had to say, thank you, the elder. I actually was the person that submitted the complaint about the sign. It was originally non-conforming, externally illuminated, and destroyed, as everybody said, in 2019 by a drunk driver, and then replaced with the current signs many years ago without a permit being applied. Before I submitted that complaint, I actually contacted a representative of the church who made it clear that they were unaware that there was not a permit. They thought it was all done and approved, and all I asked at that time was that they turn it off at night because it was too bright. And so at that point, the sign remained in operation, so I submitted a code complaint because I didn't have any other remedy to remove that hazard. I'm the one that provided the images, the video, just to clarify what it looked like at night. During the daytime, I think at the state it was being used was a distraction. The images moved, they changed frequently, but it wasn't a visibility hazard as much as it is at night. At night, that thing is practically blinding. It's so much brighter than the ambient street lights, which cover the 2 crosswalks that are adjacent on either side of that sign in that sweeping corner. In fact, one applicant or supporting letter indicated that the sign was a helpful source of illumination, and I just have to disagree with that. There's functioning streetlights above both of the crosswalks at that sweeping corner on Humboldt Hill, and it is so much brighter than even oncoming traffic when it's illuminated at night that it's almost impossible to see somebody if they were crossing the road. So I wholeheartedly agree with, I understand the church's missions, and I appreciate that. If it's just a simple matter of turning it off at night, I would definitely support that. However, I also respect and appreciate the staff's efforts at clarifying what the allowed use is. And in consideration of what this commission actually recommended for approval to the county supervisors a few weeks back, it's not allowed. So that's your choice to decide, are we going to move that forward and keep the LED but turn it off at night, or have it removed and put a more conventional sign that meets the prior type of non-conforming use that was in place at that time. So thanks for listening. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the audience here in person who wish to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will turn to Zoom and phone. I do see one hand raised. If there's anyone else on Zoom or phone who wishes to comment, please raise your hand. But right now, I'll go ahead and recognize Tamara's iPad. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just want to say that I do appreciate what the elder said and the mission that they are trying to accomplish. I own and live in a home directly across the street from the church, and from the beginning, I really found the signage to be an eyesore. Not the original signage, but the illuminated signage. And I think that the pictures that the other gentleman took were not exaggerated. It was very bright. And I have windows facing that side of the street, and they illuminate through the windows all night long. So when it got turned off, I was quite pleased. I'm not. I appreciate the staff analysis, and I would agree with that. That would be, my preferred solution. However, if we could come to some kind of agreement on curfew and, the illumination, how bright it is. I think the elder said that, sun up to sundown. However, we all know that sometimes it's sundown isn't till 9 something. So I would actually, I would like, the panel to consider that if there was a curfew, if we were going to make a compromise, that it not be set up to sundown, but, some more reasonable hours. As far as like the time display, I'm not sure how important it is to, illuminate the sky with the time. I think we all, have different resources for time. So anyway, that's just what I would like to say. Thank you all for listening. I do also just worry about what precedents this might set for the other businesses along Humboldt Hill Road, as I think the church is probably the last commercial business or whatever it's zoned, but there are quite a few businesses along Humboldt Hill Road, and I just would really hate to see my neighborhood be illuminated like, the Vegas Strip. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else on Zoom or phone wishing to comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close Zoom comments. Sir, as the applicant, if you did wish to come back up and offer any rebuttal or answer to the comments you've heard, that's your right. You have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. It was never our intent to cause any problems in the neighborhood, obviously, just by the nature of our existence, and we are certainly willing to work with any type of compromise we can to be able to keep the sign. The elder that was there before me, like I said, he was pastor for 55 years. The last couple of years he was there. I'd like to apologize to the gentleman who spoke. He said we didn't get back to you. He was, for the last 2 to 3 years that he was pastor, he was having some major health issues. And I do want to apologize. He's a very kind and very, very loving man. He just probably just didn't, he was having some trouble near the end. So I want to apologize for that. And like I said, if we can, even the lady that spoke, I walked across the street and spoke to her. She was very, very kind and just wanted the light turned off at night. And we're certainly willing to do that. There's, like I said, our audience is limited anyway. They're going to see the sign. It's only one way off Humboldt Hill and one way on, so they're going to see it anyway. So, we're certainly we want to work with people. Anything we can do to be able to keep the sign, even if we can just have it on, 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day, would be absolutely wonderful. So,
all right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll close public comment, and I bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner West.
This is a hard and unfortunate situation. From what I read of who the builder is, this is a builder that I would hope would know better. They have engaged with the Planning Commission on our codes many times. So it's frustrating that the applicant is left holding the bag on the consequences of this. However, as most of you have heard ad nauseum. I'm not a fan of electronic message signs. I don't, and particularly in this case, with the rural residential area, I don't think it's an appropriate fit. So personally, I support staff recommendation for number 4 of the replacement of the interior of the sign with a non-LED reader board.
Thank you. Commissioner Scavdall.
Yeah, through the chair, a couple of questions of staff.
Sure.
At the time the sign was put up, I understand now that applicant would have required a conditional use permit and a building permit. But we didn't have a sign ordinance. We still don't have a sign ordinance. And we didn't have an ordinance that prevented video signs that I'm aware of. So if the applicant would have come in to apply for a permit for this sign, as it states, what would the process have been? Would it even have come to the planning commission, or would that have just been a across-the-counter permit? And could a video sign have been put in?
Yeah, I think we hit on that earlier with Commissioner O'Neill's question, and I think Director Ford did a good job of trying to frame it. So if they replaced in kind, 1-for-1, same exact sign, it would just be a building permit. The zoning regulations allow for that, and they don't require any discretion of the commission or staff. If they deviate, then it becomes a question as to whether or not it is an intensification of a non-conforming use. Insofar as we've recently taken up a use permit for the whole of the property, we saw it as fitting to consider it under that use permit and say, is this covered under the use permit, and is it deviate to the extent that it's it's increasing the nonconformance? And that's the judgment call that would be presented in that forum. So we would have probably ended up here no matter what. It would have maybe saved the applicant on their investment.
Okay.
Yeah, just to be super clear, is that would have ended up here to do anything other than to replace the existing sign.
Right, so the applicant would have been advised, and they would have made a decision as to whether or not they would have come this direction or just replace the sign as it was before.
Correct.
They didn't get that opportunity, unfortunately. Okay, understand. Second question, we've heard some discussion about perhaps turning it off at night and limiting the amount of changes on the sign. And I don't know if I saw it in the staff report or in some of the comments, but there was a reference to a Caltrans standard for display signs. Does that do anything does that cover the intent that we're trying to achieve here if we word it? And I'm not suggesting that I'm in favor of that yet. I'm just trying to understand what that would be.
Mm-hmm.
There is an ongoing condition in the permit, recommended conditions, that speaks to the sign not being a hazard to motorists. And it actually takes the language of the coastal zoning regulations with regard to signs and saying no moving copy, nothing that would act as a distraction, and illumination would be up for discussion as well. I will admit that it's not as maybe pointed as perhaps it could be with regard to the intensity of the brightness. And if the commission felt nervous about that, we could get more into that. I think speaking to Caltrans does have experience in this department through their encroachment permits for highways, and I think they do have standards we can point to as a way to ensure it's safe and not too bright.
One other question. A lot of churches do have static message boards, but they're changeable, if you know what I mean. They change their message. So is it possible to have a sign similar that was before, externally illuminated, that had some sort of changeable message board if the applicant needed that?
You mean like with the letters that you place on there?
Yeah, or however they do that now.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
Just not electronic.
Yeah, I think through the chair, the commission has latitude to decide on what the universe of nonconformance covers and how far is too far and what, and I think through that motion, the motion tonight, you'll be clarifying that, but we'll want to make sure that it's clear so that it will guide the operation of the sign into the future.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Again, I'm referring to the applicants suggesting that they have changing events or something that they might want to notice, and maybe they could do that in some static manner. I just, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Mulder, I saw your hand up.
So, couple of questions through the chair to staff. First off, is the applicant or the property owner led to believe that a permit was acquired and wasn't? What is the county's protocol in that process? Is there any leeway towards property owners? Or is it pretty cut and dry? Something was built without a permit, and this is the process you need to do to acquire a permit?
So, one of the hard realities is that a property owner is responsible for what goes on their property. And so if they are, I'm going to use the term here without casting blame or innuendo, but if somebody were to lead them astray and they were to take action on that, ultimately it would still be their responsibility in the eyes of from the county's perspective relative to the violation. They may have recourse against the person that gave them that information. That would be a separate issue. Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. And then, so in the non-conforming intensification, the previous board or sign that was damaged had external illumination, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so if there was internal illumination allowed, but not allowed during nighttime, 30 minutes before sunset and 30 minutes after sunset, is there any way that you could find it that we're meeting our dark sky standards by taking away the external, the rights to allow that illumination that was taking place at nighttime to allow the internal illumination during the daylight hours? It's just, I don't know if there's a way to get to a one-for-one as far as intensification. It's just a thought process in hearing testimony that I don't know if we can get there or not.
I think that's a great point, and in making any motion, you want to articulate, should you allow signage to deviate from what historically was there, you need to explain the logic behind the decision, and you can use that as a, seen as a whole, the overall illumination may be comparable or less than the total that was historically there, albeit in a different form. So the commission can use that logic, but you'll want to explain that reducing the hours of operation in concert with the introduction of illumination that didn't exist during daylight hours is a kind of, break even.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll listen to other commissioners, but it's just, I wanted to try to think of a way that we can meet our dark sky standards and possibly maybe still keep the sign in existence or functioning in the somewhat way it is now.
Other thoughts? Commissioner McFarland?
As I'm new to this commission, I will likely be abstaining from this vote, but I did want to say that given the situation that the applicant was misled in knowing, and thinking that they had a permit, giving the comments from both public members and their willingness to find a compromise, I would ask the commission to consider some sort of medium where we would, reduce the frequency of the words flashing through the sign, reduce the illumination level, and of course setting a curfew. That's what I would ask you to consider, but I will abstain from the vote.
Okay, thank you. I'll just chime in to say I do feel conflicted. I'm deeply sympathetic to the church, to the elder who spoke to us very graciously, to the incredible work that they do in the community, and to the fact that it may be that this sign helps raise finances to do that work. But I think on balance, I have a hard time with any version of keeping the LED portion of the sign, given that it, would not be allowed under the sign ordinance that we just passed or recommended for passage, although I understand this happened earlier, before that was in effect. But, and the fact that it was done, albeit without the knowledge of the applicants, without a permit, from, on behalf of a contractor who I think should have known well that a permit would be required, for us to grant that entitlement after the fact, to sort of grant forgiveness rather than permission, as it were, I do worry that creates dangerous incentives. If it becomes easier to build something and then come in and ask for a permit to do what would not have otherwise been allowed, again, through no fault of the church themselves, but I do worry about the incentive that it would create. So I certainly like the idea that the sign could have a static changeable copy section. That's many churches actually have signs that do that. As old-fashioned as it may be, it works. Change your message once or twice a week or however often you like. So that's my thoughts at this time. Commissioner Mulder.
So I hear you, and I'm trying to find common ground, but where my thought process, and I could be totally wrong, is I'm trying to think of a way to decrease the overall intensification of the lighting. And that's, I'm not saying I love LED signs or not, I'm trying to think of a happy medium. And I also do hear you, because that was, there's many people back in the day that would, it was easier to just build without permits and then ask for forgiveness. So I don't want to set precedent also. But I'm not stuck with the idea of keeping the LED, but I don't feel that, I feel that the nighttime illumination, it'd be a tough go to take away that entitlement as long as it's external lighting. If we don't allow some sort of the internal illumination with the curfew now, I think we'd be an overstretch to ask for a curfew on external illumination, because that's technically it was legal non-conforming before. So I could go.
I see your point about that. Commissioner Scavdell.
I appreciate your comment about not setting a precedent of forgiving people after failing to get a permit. Although I also believe that this action occurred, sounds like 3 years ago, maybe even longer.
Right.
And we weren't even contemplating a sign ordinance at that time, and holding somebody to standards that quite frankly haven't yet been approved by the Board of Supervisors doesn't quite seem fair either. I'd be willing, and I'm having a sign illuminated all night from external sources, I don't think is actually an improvement over having a static LED display during daylight hours. So I would consider supporting allowing the sign to remain only illuminated during daylight hours, and I think Commissioner Mulder suggested half hour before sunrise, half hour after sunset, and a static message that could only be changed on a daily basis. So the sign is not being changed during the day when traffic is going by. They could change the message overnight or the next morning, post a new sign, but it'd basically be static. So in my view, that's similar to a static sign that they would have to put up there, except it's not going to be illuminated at night. The option is to allow them to go back to a static sign, but put lights on it. I think it's just more cost effective. First of all, I don't like to see waste either. I would propose that we allow it to stay under those terms.
And I could support that, maybe set a time like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or something, and everything else you said, that it's not a moving copy, that it only gets changed once a day, and the illums, if that's the proper term, be determined at some reasonable amount by the planning staff.
Yes, and I agree with that. The only concern I have is in the wintertime, like, it gets dark early, and so that's why I was,
But how do you set those, I mean, are they
30
smart
minutes
enough? I mean, you pre-program them, so you don't want to have to program it every day. So, as the time changes, maybe you know more about them than I do.
I think it's reasonable to request that the applicant change it at daylight savings time. So twice a year, they'd be changing it, and
The
then
time.
that would account for the darkness at night. So maybe in the winter, it would be 7 to
Okay.
4:30.
I get that.
Commissioner Mulder.
So to have parity or equality across different industries, the reason I was trying to tie into 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after sunset and sunrise is those are the dark sky standards from my understanding. So that would be using the same standard for different industries across, so that, and also the reason I was wanting to try to implement those lighting restrictions is to justify allowing the LED, the intensification of the illumination during daytime, but you can justify that intensification by the loss of illumination during the nighttime. And that's kind of how I was landing that.
I get that. I just didn't understand. I mean, like, you don't want to have to wake up every morning going, do I need to change a sign? Is there a way, you might know from the industry, is there a way to put a timer that does that?
Well, if you tie it back to the cannabis industry, you got to know when sunset is every night, so make sure you pull those tarps 30 minutes beforehand.
Yeah, see, that seems a little, I mean, I'd rather just pick a time and adjust it twice a year.
There's probably an app for that. Commissioner Curriasi.
I have a question to staff through the chair. I'm not making a comment at all about the applicant, just simply a question about enforcement. So if we have a situation where we're imposing these requirements on the LED signage and the applicant ended up not following through with that, what would be the next step regarding complaints with people in the area?
Well, we do have, I think this is illustrative of what happened. So we had a complaint, which actually precipitated into the matter before you tonight. And so that's always a pathway if necessary, but our first objective is to try to resolve the complaint in working with the applicant. So they make the necessary modifications, to use Commissioner Mulder's example of a cannabis farmer who's failing to cover up the greenhouses at the appropriate hour. We verify that they make the necessary steps to do that, and then we consider that resolved. If we see continued failure to abide by conditions of a permit approval, it's grounds for revocation under the zoning code, and it can be brought back for that if deemed appropriate.
Yeah, thank you. I think I was wrestling to try to say something similar regarding setting a precedent that you did, Commissioner Levy. I think I'm still stuck on that portion of it, as unfortunate of a situation that this is. And I think I'm leaning towards, I feel like staff did come up with a very good compromise where the applicant is replacing with a new sign that does not meet that non-conforming allowance, and we're coming up with a compromise with that. So I am leaning towards the staff recommendation.
Well, we do have a couple more items to get to, actually 3. So perhaps we ought to try, yes, Commissioner Mulder.
I'd be willing to make a motion and just see where that goes. Is that what you're asking for us?
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
So I would make a motion to approve the project, but would allow the LED lighting during daylight hours. 30 minutes, the lighting has to be turned off 30 minutes before sunset and 30 minutes, or it can be turned on 30 minutes after sunrise every day. The message would be only allowed to be static, so it can be changed from day to day, but not constantly changing. And then also that the lighting of the LED lighting of it needs to also conform with not being a hazard to motorists. There was something, a Caltrans standard or something I believe I heard, and that would be my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mulder, seconded by Commissioner O'Neill. Yes, Commissioner, Director Ford.
So I just want to clarify that motion, that includes substituting a new condition that you just recommended for the existing condition 4.
Yes, that's what I was meaning by that. And also, if there is added testimony needed in the findings for the justification allowing the intensification, I would or ask that we include the light not being utilized during dark sky hours is the reason for this finding to be supported.
Director, does that seem sufficiently clear as far as a replacement condition?
Yeah, I think we'll embellish that a little bit to include the fact that the commission finds that an externally illuminated sign and an internally illuminated sign that doesn't cast glare are essentially equivalent.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Kiriazi.
Could I ask you to repeat, I guess, what you captured Commissioner Mueller say?
Yes. So we're going to substitute condition 4 with a new condition that would indicate that the sign is approved, allowing the LED lighting, but the LED lighting needs to be off between the hours of 30 minutes before sunrise or 30 minutes before sunset and 30 minutes after sunrise. It must be a static display. The amount of light cannot be cause glare so as to distract drivers. Or just, how about if I change this to distract the traveling public?
And, yeah, okay, thank you.
Can we do a roll call?
Yeah. Okay, with that, let's take a roll call vote on this.
Commissioner Scavdo,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
No.
Commissioner McFarland,
Abstain.
Commissioner Levy,
No.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
and Commissioner Kurizarzi.
No.
Okay, motion does not pass. 3 in favor, 3 opposed, 1 abstain.
Chair, could I ask for maybe a 3-minute break?
Certainly.
Being new, can I, on a break, speak about logistics?
That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay, yes, we'll take a 3-minute recess, certainly. Can we come back into session now? Thank you. We did have a question. Is there any reason why, if a motion is made and that motion doesn't pass, but then there's discussion and somebody's changes their mind, is there any bar to somebody making the same motion that previously failed?
You can go back to that motion and reconsider that motion.
Okay.
And I think you've got circumstances right now, if you allow Commissioner McFarland to kind of articulate what she has experienced, then that may be a very appropriate path to take.
Okay. Commissioner McFarland?
I apologize for the delay. So I will be voting this time. I had previously abstained because the other issues had been brought to previous hearings when I was not a commissioner. Now that this item has not been brought forth before, I am allowed to participate, and I've also been advised ethically, because I have made comments that may have influenced any decisions, I should also vote. So I would like to vote.
That makes perfect sense. And we appreciate you taking the time to talk this through, but this is a good lesson in how the process is supposed to work. So, sounds like then maybe somebody wants to make, yes, Director
Yeah.
Ford?
Chair, you can actually call, I think, for
Just call the question.
reconsider, yes.
Okay. In light of that, since we now have 7 voting commissioners instead of 6, I would simply call the question again for the motion that was made by Commissioner Mulder, seconded by Commissioner O'Neill. Could we have a roll call again, please?
Who was the seconder? I'm sorry.
I was.
Commissioner O'Neill, I believe. Is that right? Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner McFarland,
Yes.
Commissioner Ozzie,
No.
Commissioner West,
No.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Regretfully, no.
and Commissioner Scavdall.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for breaking the deadlock. That motion passes 4-3. Okay, so the Eureka's Redwood Christian Center sign replacement permit is approved with the amended conditions as discussed. And now we come to item 2 under public hearings, which is the High Art LLC conditional use permit, which is in Willow Creek area, which is recommended for denial. And I would welcome a, good night, thank you. Welcome a staff report whenever you're ready.
Chair,
Yes.
while they're queuing that up, I want to clarify something I said earlier. When I said I visited all the sites, I did not visit this site.
You didn't, okay, thank you for clarifying that.
I think we're just waiting to get the screen share pulled up, and then we'll start.
Yeah.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Portia Saucedo. I'm the assigned planner for High Art LLC. This is a conditional use permit for which the Planning Department is recommending denial. The project is located in Humboldt County in the Three Creeks area of Willow Creek. The primary access to the site is by way of Old Three Creeks Road, and the property is approximately 7.5 miles north of the intersection of Highway 299 and Three Creeks Road, and 1.5 miles approximately north of the intersection of Three Creeks Road and Supply Creek Road. The project parcel is 226 acres. The land use designation is timberland and residential agricultural, and is zoned timberland production zone. Here's the location of the project parcel in yellow. Within the Supply Creek watershed, it's outlined in red, and the northern parcel boundary borders the Hoopa tribal lands in orange. So the applicant applied for a conditional use permit November 28th, 2016 for 20,180 square feet of existing outdoor commercial cannabis. The original configuration of the site plan, which is shown here, is scattered along the southern boundary of the Hoopa tribal lands. In addition, an interim permit was for 18,780 square feet of outdoor cultivation was issued by the planning department in December of 2017 after the cultivation area verification process. The applicant worked with the Hoopa Valley tribe for an alternative cultivation area option that was farther away and less impactful to the tribal lands. The applicant requested to relocate the scattered pre-existing cultivation onto a 2.4 acre timber conversion area that was flat and out of the tribal viewshed. The Hoopa Valley tribe was in support of the proposed relocation of the cultivation and remediation and was in support of restocking timber of the old sites. And this right here is a letter from the tribe in support, dated April of 2021. The proposed site, supported by the tribe, site plan supported by the tribe and planning, is with the cultivation areas relocated farther south from the tribal lands and concentrated on the less than 3 acre conversion flat, which you can see in the center. I don't have a pointer. So little project history is November of 2022, the state cultivation license expired. And then January of 2023, the county interim permit expired due to unpaid invoices accrued from county permit processing that had been sent to a collection agency. July of 2023, the account was brought current and the staff resumed review and processing of the application. On October 2nd of 2023, the project was noticed for hearing with a staff recommendation of approval. On October 11th, 2023, planning staff was, contacted by CDFW to notify planning that they were unable to get a hold of the applicant for a site visit. Planning emailed the applicant to advise that a lack of access to the site would result in recommendation of denial. The applicant responded to the county on October 12th and agreed to a site visit on the 13th. However, it was then delayed at the applicant's request until October 16th, which resulted in a continuation of the project hearing to November 2nd. On October 16th, planning staff and code enforcement and CDFW conducted a site inspection. Cultivation was occurring on the site without state or county permits. The plants had 2021 metric tags on the stems, and roughly a third of the crop had been freshly harvested and was not on site. The applicant stated that the missing plants were removed due to mold. Several violations of the Fish and Wildlife Code were observed and created adverse impacts to the Supply Creek watershed, including failed stream crossings, water pollution associated with cultivation activities in several areas with disposed of waste. On October 17th, the planning department was notified that the county sheriff destroyed over 2,000 live cannabis plants. And October 23rd, CDFW issued a notice of violation to the property owner as a result of the conditions of the site. Here are some of the photographs taken of the site during the October 16th visit with CDFW planning and code enforcement. And here you can see the cultivation, freshly cut plants, and the use of the 2021 metric tags down there on the bottom right. So here are additional photographs of the same day of uncontained perlite soils, trash, substandard housing, batteries, synthetic netting, and failed culvert and heavily eroded access road. So the applicant has indicated that they were unaware of the problems occurring on the site and has been taking steps to clean up the site since then. If you see attachment 5 and with emails and photographs from the applicant. Since the site visit of October 16th, county staff has been working to address the issues that were identified with the applicant and is hoping for an opportunity to resolve compliance issues and stay in the permit process. But it's important to note that the property is zoned TPZ, so if this application is denied, there's no path for any additional cannabis application on the property. Here are some of the photographs the applicant submitted October 25th and 26th of 2023 with the beginning of the site cleanup. The applicant also submitted 5 videos for the cleanup efforts. And here are 2 I will play for you.
These are from the applicant, you said?
Yes, that's correct. Oops.
And I'm sorry, did you mention what date these were from?
Yeah, the October 25th and 26th.
Okay.
These were sent. So
Right.
before it started snowing.
Yeah.
Can you replay that first video? I was trying to pay attention to the straw wattle or the wattle that's around these piles. It doesn't look like anything's securing it to the ground. And honestly, I thought I seen like a air gaps where sediment could get through, but maybe. Oh, there's a pile out there too.
Like at the beginning.
I saw what I was looking for. I was just, the wattle wasn't secured.
Thanks. So it's the planning staff's recommendation to find the project exempt from environmental review pursuant to state secret guidelines, section 15270, and find the existing cannabis operation has operated in violation of the Humboldt County Code and state regulations and has been operated as to be detrimental to the health and public safety and welfare, and to deny the conditional use permit application for High Art LLC. Alternatively, the commission could choose to approve the project with conditions. If the planning commission chooses this alternative, staff recommends that it be continued to the April 4th, 2024 planning commission meeting for appropriate findings and conditions to be prepared. Should the commission choose this alternative, staff recommends that the project be conditioned to resolve all outstanding CDFW violations and complete all on-site restoration prior to any cultivation occurring on the property.
Thank you very much. Questions at this time for Ms. Saucedo?
So if the owner of the property is saying they weren't aware of what was going on the site, does that mean there was an illegal trespass grow? I'm confused.
So, through the chair, I think we're just explaining what the owner has told us. I think they are on Zoom, and so they'd be hopefully happy to explain what they meant by that.
Sure. Okay, Commissioner Mulder?
Just a history question. Going by memory, there was a meeting. This was continued. Like so it was noticed in November and then continued. And due to a medical reason, it's supposed to happen again in January. It didn't happen in January, and now it's happening in March. Is there a reason why it didn't happen in January?
Yeah. So, as Ms. Saucedo said, it was continued at first so that we could figure out what to do with this, because we were trying to schedule all of the Supply Creek projects on the same date, if you remember, back in October. So we did continue it. The applicant asked for a continuance again because they were not able at that time to be here in person. and that was due to what we understood to be a medical situation. It was continued again in January because of what we understood to be the snowstorm back east, and that's where the applicant lives. It was continued at that point to March, to February, where it unfortunately didn't actually get posted on the agenda. And so we had to renotice it, and that's why it's here on this date. So
Thank you.
A little bit of complicated history, but.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions at this time before we do have public comment? Can you end the screen share? Thank you, so that I can see my Zoom. Okay. Well, we will, of course, have more opportunity for discussion, but I do want to invite public comment, beginning with the applicant or the applicant's agent, if either of them wishes to comment. Okay, I see a hand that just went up on Zoom. Caleb O'Connor, is that the property, the owner or the applicant? Okay, yes, go ahead, Mr. O'Connor. You can have up to 50 minutes if you need it, but hopefully maybe 10 minutes is enough. Mr. O'Connor? We can't hear you yet. It looks like you're unmuted, but no, we're not getting any sound. Well, while we give him a moment to see if we can fix that, is there anyone else in the room who wishes to comment on this item? Is there anyone else on Zoom or phone who wishes to comment on this item? I see Margro Advisors' hand has gone up. Perhaps that's the agent. So Margro Advisors, please go ahead. You can make a presentation on behalf of the applicant.
We wanted to make a public comment
Okay.
on this.
Just to be clear, are you actually the agent for this project?
We have briefly consulted Mr. O'Connor,
Okay.
and we are willing to assist him through the compliance process, but we are not an agent for him at this time. So
Okay.
we wanted to let the Planning Commission know that he would have the appropriate resources for compliance, and also provide our perspective on his situation.
Go ahead. I will give him another opportunity if he can make his mic work, but
Okay. Okay, yeah, I mean, we can probably try to connect him through the phone if it doesn't work. But I just wanted to just speak for a moment regarding the CDFW violations from the inspection, and the fact that it only lists 3 items. And, you know, we've seen a lot of these in the past few years, and truly neglected properties, you know, they'll often have 10, 12, 15 pages and pages of violations, and that really isn't the case here with this project. We believe that the 3 items that are listed, they are manageable and can be properly rectified to Fish and Wildlife's approval. I'm sorry, was that him, Caleb?
Yes, hi. Hello?
yes, we can hear you now. But so why don't we let Margro Advisors finish their comment, and then we'll go to you, Mr. O'Connor, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks. And again, this is Kelly Flores with Margro Advisors. So I was just pointing out, you know, as consultants, we provide compliance support in part to help with environmental stewardship. You know, the folks that are here to play by the rules, protect the environment. And, you know, we believe that denial of the permit would actually result in the property not being attended to or remedied. And, you know, while we're not currently his agent, I did want the commission to know that he would have the proper support for ensuring that the property is moved into compliance with both county and state agencies. We believe that he is very committed to making the necessary improvements, and that the commission does have the opportunity to approve under the alternative to staff recommendations that are described at the end of the staff report. So we'd like the commission to have consideration for the best solution for improving the land, which will improve the environment. And we do believe that Mr. O'Connor is willing to make that commitment, and we hope that you will provide him with the opportunity to do so. So I will turn it over to him.
Thank you very much. And now, Mr. O'Connor, I'm glad you were able to make yourself heard. Go ahead. You can take up to 10 minutes if you need it, although don't feel any need to take that much time if you don't.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you all to the planning commissioners here present and for the planning department. I greatly appreciate your services and for being willing to hear me out. So I have a prepared statement, and I know there's some questions. So once I've read this, then perhaps I can answer your questions to your satisfaction. But
sure.
Here it goes. For years, I worked to the best of my ability and understanding to ensure that the property I was living on and caring for was being done according to the laws set forth in the county and state, and worked closely with the planning department for years, official Rodney Yandell. Over the years, I faced many challenges, but none like the ones I faced over the past 2 years. When the cannabis market collapsed, it left me in a very difficult financial position, owing money and having invested over $750,000 into the property, my life's family's savings. The market collapse necessitated me returning to my prior work as a commissioned artist and delaying my dreams of making my living with my homestead farm. To make ends meet, I moved with my family to Huntsville, Alabama, where I am completing a contract to create many artworks for federal buildings being built here. I expected to be able to leave the farm with little oversight, as I plan to travel back personally periodically to ensure everything was being cared for. Life had other plans for me. First, I had an injury, and I needed a full right shoulder replacement. Then my wife, Sarah, suffered a very difficult pregnancy and delivery with our firstborn child. Fortunately, our daughter, Anna Claire, was born healthy, despite her mother's frail health and having nearly died during her childbirth. Recovering myself, working, and then being a caregiver for my wife, who was unable to take care of herself or travel after the delivery, I ended up needing to take care of both my wife and my newborn daughter and complete my art business. I admit that during this time, the farm was the furthest thing from our minds. Still, it was my every intention to earn enough to come back and run my farm. When I got a call from the planning department that my property was up for review for its final permit, I was elated, thinking that my years of hard work were going to pay off. It wasn't until I heard the results of my inspection that I discovered a lot more had been going on at my farm while I was away. I am not here tonight to make excuses or place blame on others. In the end, my farm fell into the wrong hands, and I accept this as all my fault for having failed to pay attention to what was happening while I was away. The farm was not supposed to be in operation last year, and I apologize for what has happened. I am here to ask for the opportunity to make it right, to ask for a very conditional approval. Listed in the report is an alternative to staff recommendation. Let me prove that with my full attention and care, I can bring the property into full compliance and keep it that way. I am willing to commit that no plants will be placed into the ground until Fish and Wildlife and Planning Department are completely satisfied. More than anyone in the room, I want this site to be returned to the clean, working homestead farm where I can raise my family. But if the commission decides that the violations and the mistakes are too much, please know that I will have no choice but to foreclose, and my ability to rectify these mistakes and restore the land will be lost. Thank you all for hearing me out. And with that, I'm finished with my statement, and if there are any questions, I'm available to answer.
Thank you. Well, and we may have more questions for you later, but are there any questions at this time for the applicant? Yes, Commissioner McFarland.
Do you plan to move back on site to the property anytime soon during the remediation of all of these?
I'm actually getting a trailer right now, like a trailer home, so that I can live with my wife up on the property or near it periodically while we clean it up and recondition it. but I'm in the process of making those plans.
Any other question at this time? Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. O'Connor. We'll end your comment period now, but we will, reserve the right possibly to ask additional questions. So please stay with us.
Thank you all very much.
I don't see any other hands up on Zoom or phone, so I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission for deliberation. Commissioner Mulder.
Through the chair to staff, if this is denied, and they go through the process or whatever, the county would be responsible for cleaning the property up. Is that correct or incorrect?
That is correct. It would probably be through some sort of a lien that was placed on the property.
Okay. Let me sit with the rest of my thoughts.
Okay, Commissioner Scavdall.
So this project is in the Supply Creek watershed. We had several other projects that were in that watershed, and it's my understanding that Supply Creek is tributary to the water supply for the Hoopa tribe, or the lands. There was previously a letter of support from the tribe for the relocation, but have they been engaged recently with respect to the violations that have occurred on site and any issues with this project?
Not with respect to the violations, no. We did reach out and seek to facilitate comment from the tribe when we were bringing all of the Supply Creek projects forward, and they chose not to comment at that time. I will say, with regards to the violations here, one of the public commenters stated that the fishing game violations weren't as severe as they've seen on others. I think that's a fair statement. The primary issue that we felt that it was necessary to bring this forward and recommend denial was the fact that the site was being operated without a state license. It was cultivating without a state license or a county permit.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mulder.
The other part, from my understanding and reading it the first time, I didn't read through it as thoroughly this time, I will admit. There was potential that was being cultivated with diverted water as well, isn't that? I'm going by memory, so.
Give us a second to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Can we mute the caller? I mean, he's still live. He's not making any noise, but if we can just, yeah, done. Thanks. Director Ford, while they're looking that up, I guess and Mr. Johnson did sort of speak to this just now, but it was a little bit unclear to me from the staff report and the presentation what the breaking point was here. I mean, there have been, it's obviously a recommendation for denial is something you do not take lightly. It's done pretty rarely. In other cases where I recall that happening, you know, I guess I feel like there was often a longer history of broken promises, failed follow-through, et cetera. A sense that, you know, you'd given them a few chances and they hadn't made it happen. So, so as Cliff just said, the Fish and Game violations in themselves would not probably have been enough to warrant that recommendation. But it was the fact that there was cultivation occurring using 2021 metric tags in violation of state and county law. Was that basically the deciding factor?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Mulder.
So this one's a tough one. I'll admit, I mean, when I read through this the first time, it was like, wow. But for me, I'm kind of sitting there not confused, but like completely cultivating at that scale with no license or county permit. That's kind of, in my mind, saying like complete disregard for all of the rules and the ordinances we passed. And that was my take on it here. Also looking at the environmental concerns, I'm kind of like, is there any way to guarantee this site's cleaned up? And if it doesn't get cleaned up, is there any way that it can go back to the tribe? Is kind of like where my mindset's coming from. And I don't know how we would get there, but that's kind of, I don't know.
To ask
Commissioner
a
O'Neill.
question. Has anything that you heard tonight from Margot Advisors or Caleb O'Connor changed your perspective on whether it should move forward?
I think we have talked to Mr. O'Connor before, and while his story is extremely, I don't know what to say, you know, to hear about the health issues that he and his wife have had, and he does seem to be a pretty well-renowned artist, and so you could understand how somebody may not be thinking about the operation of the property here in California. That's the problem.
I still don't understand who this person or persons were that were cultivating without his knowledge.
No, he didn't say without his knowledge.
Oh,
They were cultivating on his behalf and not maintaining the site in a way that's complying with county code, state code, fish and game code, water board
But if they
code.
were, and I'm not as familiar with the cannabis industry and what you can or can't get away with, because, I mean, what I've seen is pretty detrimental out in the field, but he had to have known that he was cultivating without a license, even if it was someone else doing it in his behalf, right?
I think his testimony, I don't want to put words in his mouth, is that he didn't know what was going on here.
Is that fly?
Well, I mean, so I think I share your confusion because it does seem that his testimony is
He didn't know.
that he didn't know cultivation was happening this past year, if I understood what he just said.
And I
That-
know there could be cases where someone would say, hey, you're not around, I'm gonna go grow some, you know, cannabis on your property. But I didn't hear from him, only from what I've heard from staff, is that he didn't know it was going on, or he did know, but he was confused.
I think you would need to revisit that with him. I mean, from
I have a
unenforced-
problem with this because, like, we have a lot of people that have come before us that have been doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, and somehow they get through this process. And then we've had people that we've denied, and they've gone to the supervisors and they've reversed our decision. So, you know, is this the one of the handful? Because, I mean, I could probably go back and tell you how many we've turned down, maybe 3 in the whole time I've been here, maybe 4, I don't know. So is this on the level of the other ones that we've turned down? I'm not sure I can figure, you know, make that assessment.
Commissioner Scavdall.
The challenge I have is that this was going on during a period of time when we had the tribal consultant doing a review of the watershed and other applicants in the Supply Creek watershed working together to do a study of the water usage in that area. There was a lot going on. We heard and approved several other permits in the Supply Creek watershed, and I think we made a commitment to the downstream property owners and the public water system that exists on the tribal lands to be good stewards. And this is a failure here. We can, come up with a lot of different reasons why it failed, but it failed. It was an illegal grow. Some subterfuge going on with the tags. So I'm prepared to support staff's recommendation.
Commissioner Mulder.
Through the chair to staff, was there any luck in the water source that was cultivating the plants?
As best as we can tell, there was no diversion that was happening. That was not documented by the CDFW or during our site visit, and the water source is a permitted well.
Okay, my apologies, I might have misread something. I hear Commissioner Scabdall, and I'm leaning definitely more towards denial. I'm going to use the term that Commissioner Levy used earlier, precedent. So if we said, yeah, go ahead and keep it along, then I would assume that's saying sets precedent to it's fine to let your permits lapse. It's fine to have CDFW come out and see you cultivating with no license, and it's fine to get raided by the sheriff's department because of no license. The planning commission will still pass you through. So that's kind of where I'm. But on the other breath, I'm looking at all the environmental cleanup that needs to take place there. I see a significant amount of environmental cleanup. So that's my only hang up on whether it's denied or a way to approve it, but it's not allowed to cultivate. They'd have to have probably 4 inspections a year until all the violations are done. And then if they don't do it, then they would have to donate the land back to the tribe. So that way the tribe could make sure that their watershed was protected. But I'm having a hard time even going there. I'm just thinking of if it's denied, they're walking away and all that sediment's going into the watershed. Unless we...
Yes, Director Ford, you'd like to speak to that?
Yeah, I just would like to say process-wise, the way the ordinance works is that the property owner is still responsible for cleaning this up. If they don't do that, then it would become a quote code enforcement action. If there are things that are there that need to immediately be abated because it's discharging sediment or, there's other things out there that need to be cleaned up, the county, once it goes through the process of issuing the notice of violation, notice to abate, would then be in a position to abate that. There is a limited fund that we normally have to do that work. But then that, as I think Portia mentioned, that then becomes a lien against the property.
So essentially, the county, in the case of urgent work, does the work up front. If it's not done otherwise, fronts the cost of that, but attaches a lien that should make the county whole.
Yeah, and that just for clarification, that lien then goes on the tax bill. So then if it's not paid as part of the tax bill, then it becomes like a delinquent tax. And then after, it's a 3-year period, it's not immediate. But if the property's sold, the county's in line to get paid. If otherwise, the treasurer tax collector will sell the property.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Scabdall?
I just find it very difficult to be put in a position to have to approve a project that was operating illegally under the threat that it won't be cleaned up otherwise. That's just hard for me to swallow.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I mean, I share Commissioner Mulder's concern about this, and the fact of the matter is that has been an argument in some cases for extending some lenience, for trying to allow a plausible path for a permit for an applicant to come through the process and into compliance, but that doesn't mean it's, should extend to any circumstances. Anyone feel like making a motion?
They can always appeal to the supervisors, like the last one,
That's their right.
and they overturned us.
Yeah, Commissioner Kiriazi.
I think it sounds like there's a fair amount of history associated with this watershed in this area. I guess I wanted just to say that I'm leaning towards abstaining, and wanted to confirm that that would actually be appropriate in this situation. I think it would.
I guess we would ask why you would abstain. There is a fair amount of history with the Supply Creek watershed in terms of getting to a place where those projects could be approved. And I think that's the point that Commissioner Skavdal was making, is that I think all the rest of the property owners within this watershed work together to do some pretty, frankly, elaborate studies.
Mm-hmm.
This is a different situation. This is a different set of facts. He did work with them for a while, and perhaps could even be approved under that, had there not been this turn taken of just not complying with the county ordinance, state law for licensing of cannabis, or fish and game code.
But just to clarify for Commissioner Kiriazi, unlike even the ECD holdings, where there was some testimony at the last meeting, I don't recall there being any testimony or substantive information at all. As Commissioner Mulder mentioned, it was on the agenda, but then it was continued, and it was continued again. But there was nothing, no information was shared about it that you didn't receive.
Thank you for that clarity.
Sure. Commissioner Skavdal.
I'll make a motion that we find this project exempt from environmental review, that we find the existing cannabis operation is operated in violation of Humboldt County Code and state regulations, has been operated as to be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare, and that we deny the conditional use permit application for High Art LLC.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Skavdal, seconded by Commissioner Mulder. Is there any further discussion before we vote? Okay, could we please have a roll call vote on that then? The motion to deny.
Commissioner Kiriazi,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Skavdal,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner McFarland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. The project is denied per the staff recommendation for the reasons given. Okay, let's see if we can get through the one other public hearing plus the parcel map subdivision that was pulled from consent. This brings us now to Pacific Roots Cannabis LLC, special permit in the Petrolia area. Thanks for those of you who have patiently waited perhaps to comment on this. Mr. Santos, whenever you're ready. Or is it? Yes.
Chair Levy, members of the commission, good evening again. Stephen Santos presenting the Pacific Roots project. We are in the process of sharing our PowerPoint. This project was a special permit that was originally scheduled before the zoning administrator, but because we received some potential interest from the public, and because if approved, it would bring total cultivation to an acre. The project was referred to the Planning Commission. I'll just keep going while Cliff works on it. The project is in the Petrolia area. The driveway to the project parcel takes access from Chambers Road, which is a county-maintained road. The project particulars are to add approximately 33,000 square feet of additional outdoor commercial cannabis cultivation to a previously approved project. If approved, the total cultivation area would be 1 acre of outdoor commercial cannabis cultivation. The project proposal also includes adding non-volatile manufacturing to the operation, as well as distribution. The previously approved wholesale nursery and ancillary nursery will be reconfigured. Wonderful. But those aren't really changing in terms of the overall entitlement. And then a small previously approved research and development area will also remain. Oh, and the project also includes, in addition to manufacturing and distribution, off-site processing. Estimated annual water usage is approximately 463,000 gallons, which translates to about 9.6 gallons per square foot per year. The water source for irrigation will be exclusively rainwater catchment. There is a permitted well on site which will be used only to support the processing and the manufacturing, not the cultivation. At full build out, there'll be 495,000 gallons of storage, which would consist of the proposed 425,000 gallon pond plus 70,000 gallons in tanks. The parcel is served by PG&E, and then the project would be using renewable energy. Here is a screenshot excerpt of the site plan showing sort of the layout of where the cultivation would go. I do want to note that the property is 38 acres, the legal parcel, and is comprised of 2 separate tax APNs. We did receive public comment. We received 2 written comments in support of the project. One was included in the packet. The other one we got just a couple of days ago and was uploaded to Insight. So the staff recommendation is to consider the final EIR for the CLUO and the addendum for the project and make the required findings for approval per Humboldt County Code and adopt the resolution approving the Pacific Roots special permit subject to the staff conditions of approval. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Santos. Any questions at this time for staff? Yes, Commissioner Kiriazi.
Through the chair to staff, I was curious about if staff had any insight on why, let me rephrase that. Is herbicide and pesticide use in cultivation allowed just generally unless explicitly not allowed?
So through the chair, there are some restrictions on the use of pesticides and herbicides. We'd have to look at the specific code reference at this point. I believe, for instance, rodenticides actually are prohibited in county code. One of the things that we do in the conditions of approval is try to highlight some of the most important things, even if they are code requirements, just so that applicants are fully aware of what those restrictions are.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I noticed that improper use is allowed for this project, but for other projects they were explicitly not allowed per the biological report, and that recommendation was not in the biological report for this project. So I was just curious if that it's allowed if it's used properly, whereas other projects, they've been denied per recommendations by a biological report, and it just happens to not be a recommendation for this project. So I was just curious about that.
Through the chair, are you saying that that's not a listed condition that you've seen on other ones? Is that what you're asking?
Well, for example, on the biological report for the ECD project, that was a recommendation to not allow the use of herbicides and pesticides. It was not a recommendation on this one, and I was
Understood.
kind of thought that was odd.
So the recommendation that you observed in the ECD biological assessment was related to the finding that there was sensitive bumblebee habitat surrounding the project area. So that's why there was that specific recommendation in that case. And just to give an example of one of the things that Cliff mentioned, condition of approval C8 prohibits the use of anticoagulant rodenticide, which is pretty universal.
Okay, so actually we should invite public comment. If there's no further questions at this time, I do want to invite public comment if the applicant is present or their agent. Are you the applicant?
The agent. for the
Agent,
applicant.
then yes, go ahead. You could have up to 10 minutes if you wish.
I'll make this very brief.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Kate Sensi. I'm the agent for Pacific Roots. The owner is Alex Roney. He's also, I believe, on Zoom and might want to say a little something. But thank you all for being here this evening. Thank you, planning staff and Director Ford.
Can you actually pull the mic down just a little bit?
I'm short, sorry.
No, thanks.
I helped Alex put together this application. I helped him with his original one in 2019. He's been operating there since 2020, actually on a property that he grew up on. He doesn't live there, but visits the farm every day, or almost every day, is very active in that process. And he's not only my client, he's my friend, also an upstanding member of the community of Petrolia, which I'm also a member of. And yeah, I'm here to answer any questions if anyone has any. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any questions at this time? If not, if we need to, we can call you back up.
Great,
Thank
thank
you. Mr. Roney, I see you on Zoom. Would you like to speak now? I think yeah, there you go. Unmuted now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
This is Alex Roney. I appreciate all your guys' time and careful consideration. And I'll keep this brief, but I just want to state that I am a, very caring member of our community out here. And I care deeply about the sustainability and regeneration of my farm. And would appreciate the approval of this project and what it would mean for my family and the longevity of us being in this community and raising our children in the school out here. And yeah, any specific questions you have, I'd be happy to answer, but thank you all for your time.
Any questions for the owner applicant? I do have one brief question, and possibly I missed this in the staff report. It explains the projected amount required for irrigation, which we understand is not going to come from a well, at least not without a further study being done, and looks like rainwater catchment in the pond is sufficient. But the well will be used for water use in manufacturing, is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Do you have an estimate of how much water that process will require? I guess I'm asking either the applicant or the agent or perhaps Mr. Santos, but Ms. Sensi, I think, is coming up with that information. So just please approach the mic.
Yes.
Thanks.
For processing, it was just over 4,000 gallons, and for manufacturing, just over 5.
4,000 and 5,000?
Yeah, it's not, I mean, processing is mostly hand washing, things like that, yeah.
Okay.
Same with manufacturing.
Okay, not very much, in other words.
No.
Thank you. If there's no other questions at this time for the applicant, then I'll see if there's anyone else in the room who wishes to comment on this project. And if not that, is there anyone on Zoom or phone who wishes to comment? Seeing no hands up in person or on Zoom, we will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for further discussion. People feel pretty good about this project?
I do. I did, like I said, I did go out here. Beautiful piece of property, cool old barns. I commented on the roads on the other project. This area is rural and agricultural, and you know, I'm sure the roads make dust here too, but it's not as residential as the earlier project that we were looking at.
Right.
And quite frankly, Chambers Road's in better shape than Petrolia Road is from Ferndale. So I was actually happier to drive on this road than the county road. But no, it looks like a good project.
Is that your motion?
That is.
Okay, so sounds like Commissioner Scavdall is making a motion to approve this project with staff recommendations and conditions.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Mulder. Any discussion on that motion before we vote? I think it seems like a great project too. So let's call the question. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner McFarland,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. The Pacific Roots Cannabis project is approved as recommended. And now, that brings us back to items pulled from consent. And Commissioner Scavdall had pulled the family parcel map subdivision. Was there a very specific question, or did you want a full report?
Chair Levy, I'd appreciate if we could waive the staff report, but perhaps pull up the tentative map.
Certainly.
And so that I can ask a question. And for staff, while you're pulling that up, the question relates to the parcel that's less than 20,000 square feet and the current zoning. I'm just trying to understand. It seems, in my view, very simple to get a 20,000 square foot parcel, and I thought I didn't really understand a reason for why we were going to approve something smaller than that in this area.
So I don't want to put words in the applicant's mouth, but I think if we can look at the tentative map while I speak on this, you can see it's a little confusing. There's parcel 1 and parcel 2 that front on Eggert Road, but parcel 3 does not really have frontage other than the flag that you see on the north end. So parcel 3, boy, you really can't see the contour lines, but not far into the parcel, it begins to drop off. So there's not, is for being such a large parcel, it doesn't really have that much usable acreage. So I think that the design essentially is working with the land that is developable. And even though parcel 3 looks large, that it could give up enough acreage to get each parcel over the 20,000, it doesn't really, in fact, have that much more usable acreage. I have an exhibit in the slideshow I can show kind of what the usable areas are.
Okay. I tend to disagree with that statement. So parcel 1 is almost, I mean, it needs 3,000 square feet more to be, to meet the 20,000 square foot minimum that we're looking for there, which is, would extend that property line 30 feet from farther down. I guess that's, I don't know where north is on that. I guess it would be to the north.
Could I pull up that exhibit just so you can
Sure.
kind of see what I'm talking about?
Can I just ask while he's doing that, is the owner or applicant or agent by any chance here, if we need you, or if you wish to, I just wanted to know that, yeah.
Okay, so what I was referring to is on this slide here. So the yellow line, the squiggly line, is sort of what I would say the reasonable break and slope. The red areas are what I would identify as potential building footprints, and the green areas are areas where septic systems have been designed for the parcels. The two that are in that flagpole will likely be moved down behind the red area on parcel 1, and that's because there was a change in the subdivision design at the recommendation of Public Works to put the flagpole up towards the northern end. But you can see there's not a huge amount of area to work with once you start accounting for building sites. Now, those building sites could be shrunk, and I think you're right, it would be a nominal amount of land. But even though it's such a large parcel, there's not a huge amount of developable area.
No, I understand. My concern is that there are a lot of other developable properties out in this area, and if we're starting to make exceptions to going under the parcel size, I think there should be a really strong reason to do that. And I think, even by what you show there, that they can either adjust that one property line 30 feet, that distance between those 2 points and those 2 parcels is 90 feet, so a third of the distance, and they would make the 20,000 square feet, or they could do it at a diagonal if they wanted to, or whatever. They could get parcel 1 to 20,000 square feet without much effort.
It's certainly the discretion of the commission to insist on that. I think you're right that there are ways to achieve the minimum parcel size with the land available.
That's my only concern here. I fully support this project. I would just like to see parcel 1 meet the minimum parcel size.
I would just point out, if you might, that it's actually planned for densities that are much greater than 20,000 square feet. It's a 1 to 7 unit per acre density. However, the lack of sewer system in this area is what really is the constraint. So it's certainly conceivable in the near term that there would be potential for re-subdivision, if that gives you any,
Okay, as I read your report, I thought it was zoned for 20.
It's zoned for 20,000, but the density planned for this area is 1 to 7 units per acre.
Understood.
Okay, well, we have other commissioner comments, and I also want to give the applicant the opportunity to speak if you'd like, but maybe we'll take your questions or comments first. Commissioner Kiriazi.
Thank you. Question to staff regarding the requirement to widen Eggert Road. I was curious what the reasoning for this is. What is the reasoning for widening the road here?
Eggert Road is identified in the circulation portion of the Eureka Community Plan as a road targeted for a secondary access point through Elk River, and it potentially may be connected one day and serve as a multi-use bike lane, parking, and pedestrian route. So it will need a lot more right-of-way than it currently has to achieve that, but it is planned for that.
Is the widening intended to be a divided, is it requesting sufficient space to be a divided road plus a bike lane in addition to the 20 additional feet?
Correct. Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay.
Commissioner Mulder? Oh, no. Oh, okay. Well, then, why don't we invite the applicant to come on up? Just want to be clear, there's the other people in the audience, are you wishing to comment on this project? You are, yes. Okay, so we'll open public comment, beginning with the applicant, then with the other people here.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me and for having this item before you. Just a couple of comments first in regards to Commissioner Scavdall's request to make that the full 20,000 square feet. One of the reasons we reduced it down to 0.4, originally it was 0.46 or whatever that is. When it was on the northern portion, when we moved it to the southern portion, because there's so much, trees and other, kind of shrubs on the northern portion, we didn't want to have to take that out, and that was what would be required in order to get the road to go that far in to give that 20,000 square feet. So that was the first one. And then in regards to Commissioner Curriasi's point, I would love to not have to pave the extra 5 feet. So if that was part of this motion, I would greatly appreciate that. It is going to add a significant cost, and I don't see it adding any benefit to the Eggert Road currently. And as part of this, obviously the right of way is being given for the full 20, so that eventually could happen. But so those are my comments at this point. Thank you.
Questions for the applicant? I guess I'll ask in Commissioner Scavdall's stead. I understand why you flipped it so that the smallest parcel is now where it is, but I think, and I should mention that I have not been there, have not seen the site on the ground, but his question was, is there some reason why, given that configuration, you couldn't extend that line a little bit out, or perhaps diagonally slant the line to take back a little bit of parcel 3 to bring it up to 0.46 acre?
The main reason is to not have to remove the existing trees and plants that are already there. By moving that line out and for that road to come, for that flag lot, it would require the removal of a lot of existing trees, and in order to have enough footprint, a building footprint. So that was the main reason.
I have a question. Aren't you going to have to move them anyway to do the leach line? Because, I mean, the leach fields, because right now it looks like the leach fields are on parcel 3, or at least the color coding that shows where you're going to put it. And I don't know if the county allows shared leach fields for 2 properties, because you could move the house on 3 and maybe have a shared leached area for the 2, but it doesn't seem like you're going to have enough property for
Yeah,
a leach field.
I think on the northern section, we wouldn't have to remove the trees, but I could be mistaken.
I don't know. You still have to have so much real estate in order to have a leach line and an alternate
Right.
in case it fails, so.
The leach line for the large parcel is kind of in the middle of it, so it wouldn't be up against either of the.
I'm worried more
borders.
about parcel 1's leach field than I am
Gotcha.
3.
Yeah.
3 seems like they probably have a lot of real estate. I mean, you could move the house where the proposed leach field is, and then you'd have more leach field
Right.
in the same location as 1 and 3. But you still have to have a big enough parcel to do a leach field and a
Right.
reserve. And does the county believe that that's the case here?
As long as the leach fields aren't affected by the parcel boundaries,
Yeah.
there should be adequate.
Yeah, you're right. I think we should probably complete public comment. I know I asked you a question, but let's just complete public comment with other people who may wish to comment, and if we have additional questions for the owner, we can call him back up. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Hello,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I would like to thank Mr. Lazar for giving me all kinds of information. I emailed him and called, I didn't call him, but I emailed him, and so he was really helpful. My name is Glenn Rickle. My wife and I live at 6411 Eggert, which is right next to the property. It's right next to parcel number 2. We are both in favor of the proposed subdivision. I just found out about the widening of the road and the potential of, I heard rumors about about Eggert and Elk River being connected. That's for another discussion, though. It's nice to have a dead end. The only request I have of the families is that when they finally get to the point where they're going to build a house on parcel 2, is to not have it a 2-story. And that's my only. But other than that, I think it's a great idea. We've been here for 4 years, and it's going to be different looking out at an empty field, but it'll be nice having a neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment, either in the room or on Zoom? Seeing none, we will close public comment. Thank you all. Bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Can we restrict how buildings to 1 story? Is that in our? purview?
That's not ripe yet, I think, because there's no development being proposed here.
That's, yeah, the regulation on height would be done through the zoning ordinance or somehow modifying the zoning ordinance. We don't have an entitlement that's in front of you right now that would allow you to attach those kind of conditions.
Commissioner Mulder.
I'd make a motion that adopts the resolution attachment 1, which does the following: finds that the project is consistent with the development density and policies established by an existing community plan and general plan for which an EIR was certified, and that no additional environmental review is required per section 15183 Estate CEQA guidelines, and make all the required findings for the approval of the partial map subdivision and special permit, and approves the family, as hopefully I'm enunciating that right, minor subdivision and special permit, subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Mulder, seconded by Commissioner Curriasi. Any additional discussion before we vote? If not, then let's have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner McFarland,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Scavdall.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. The parcel map subdivision and special permit is approved. And before we adjourn, I do want to thank the director for the planner report that you attached, and ask you to just speak on that if you wish.
Sure, I won't take long. I'd just say we wanted to give you a little bit of update, really to cover two things. One, we are working with CDFW to make sure their concerns are being addressed. That does result in some delays, and so we've been missing some hearings as a result of that, but just want to explain that and say that it's working. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Any questions on that item at this time? Yes, Commissioner West.
It's related in a way. I know with the discussion of the ballot measure that has not been officially certified yet, but do we anticipate a cannabis ordinance coming before us anytime soon?
A lot of people are pushing for the so-called 3.0. And so that is a discussion that's in front of the board. I think it'll probably grow to ripeness. We're going to take a report forward to the board shortly on the watersheds, and that'll probably be wedged into that discussion.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I just want to update the commission. If you weren't able to see the board hearing on Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors have passed and approved the short-term rental ordinance. A lot of good comments were made about the work of the Planning Commission, so I just wanted to pass that along, that the commission, or many of the supervisors, really, I think, appreciated the hard work that the commission did, and really didn't want to tinker with it too much. There were a few changes that were made. One of them was to require that the Good Neighbor guide be required of all short-term rentals, whether they're home shares or full unit rentals. Made a modification to impose a cap on the rest of the county outside of the greater Humboldt Bay area of 5%, but that can be exceeded with approval of a special permit. In terms of farm stays were kind of called out, defined a little bit better, requiring that there be an occupant or owner on the site, but those are also exempted from the cap. I think those are probably the major changes that were, well, and The supervisors also, where the commission had put a maximum of 5% of the housing stock within each community plan area, the board took that to 2%. So it's 2% for the Humboldt Bay Area plan and 2% for each of the community plans within that area.
Individually as well as in aggregate?
Yes.
Okay. So, like in the case of Trinidad West Haven, the numbers are already in excess of that.
Right.
So that effectively freezes new permits until it falls to 2%?
Right.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Well, I appreciate that. Any quick questions while we are on the subject? Okay, if not, thank you so much, Director. I know we are slightly over time. I just want to offer.
I'm sorry, Chair, could I bring up one other thing?
Yes, please.
Is that, you know, we tried to put the items pulled from consent down at the end of the agenda as kind of a trial.
Yeah.
But we're really trying to keep the things on consent super minor.
Yeah.
And I know there was an appropriate question tonight, and that probably could have been dispatched with where items pulled from consent normally are.
Mhm.
And I just was going to bring up for the commission's consideration whether or not you want to move that back up on the agenda. So
I can see the arguments both ways. Thoughts on this? Okay.
I'm okay with where it is.
Yeah. I suppose we can always handle it on a case-by-case basis if it seems like something is pulled as a, oh, yes, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
I
Commissioner
was
West.
just going to share my opinion that I would be supportive of moving it up to earlier. They're often shorter discussions, and I hate to watch applicants sit here for 3 hours for a 10-minute hearing.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. They're
Okay.
relatively simple, so I think it's better to get them done.
Sometimes it's a 10-minute hearing because we only have 10 minutes left.
Right?
Very good point.
Okay, and before we adjourn, I do just want to offer any commissioners who want to bring up anything under Planning Commission discussion items. I know it's late and brains are tired. I will just make a very quick point, which is that we're due now to nominate and elect the chair and vice chair of this commission again. We wanted to wait until after Tuesday because the vice chair was Brian Mitchell. Now that we know who our 7 commissioners are, I've asked Director Ford to put that on the agenda for next meeting. And I wanted to let you know that much as I have enjoyed being chair for about 1.5 years, I'm ready to pass that along. I honestly think that there's a value in switching that up every year or two. And so I just wanted to give you guys the heads up. I think we're blessed with a number of people who would make great chairs. There's certainly. I'd prefer to pass it along. I mean, I'm not, we'll see what happens, but I would prefer to pass that along to somebody else. We have, for the time that I've been on the commission, had a kind of informal tradition, which is not a rule, that the chair goes to the person who's been on the commission the longest. And I just want to acknowledge that Commissioner O'Neill, you have the greatest longevity after me, and then Commissioner Mulder, and I think you both could be very well suited to the roles, but I also think that other newer commissioners would do a great job too. Just wanted to put it out there. We're not doing anything about it tonight, but it will be on the next agenda. Okay?
So for clarification, how it works, do we vote at the next agenda and it's limited to us or others per role?
Oh, yeah, no, it's, it's not a public vote. It's, oh, well, no, it is just a fair question. Thanks for asking. It is just, it's an action item on our agenda, and a motion will be made to nominate a chair and vote on that, and if that is approved, if that person passes, then we would do the same thing for a vice chair.
And we would have discussion first to see who's interested?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. We'll absolutely won't do anything without, without a discussion, and I don't think it makes any sense to vote anybody in who hasn't said they're willing to do it, so, but that's what I would recommend. Yes, Commissioner West.
Just real briefly, you're going to be a tough act to follow. I've really appreciated the way you've handled the meetings and your presence, and real eye for fairness and making sure everybody is heard.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Here, here.
All right, well, with that, I guess we're adjourned. See y'all in 2 weeks.